Unfortunately, I didn't have enough time to post the link to this video and create it and get everything done in time to get people in right away. So we'll just kind of hang out. Those of you in the future, hey, it's me, Exmo Joe. How you been? We've had a crazy week. I did my first emergency sermon. Link, by the way, to the StreamYard is in the description of the video. For people who want to come and join us and linger longer. I called out some Mormons for promoting genocide. I also did quite a bit of work for Rapture 2025. Unfortunately, I don't have the update video done for that. I've been busy. It's been a wild, busy week. I've also been working on our first stab at our new ordinance overview. I have a recording. I'm not entirely happy with it. So I'm going to work on it a little bit. I'm not going to try to obsess too much about it because, over time it'll get better. And I am trying to be, hold on. There we go. I am trying to let the experience of overview become a bigger part of the, I'm letting it get shaped by the people who are actually going to experience it. So my first one that we've done is going to be mainly a reading of Pale Blue Dot. It's my voice reading it rather than Carl Sagan's. It's bad enough that I'm stealing the man's words, let alone his voice. But I added a tone to it that is shown in studies to help induce meditative states. So we're going to kind of play with that for a little bit. I also want to create a version of it that has a little bit of music to it. Those people who, music can enhance the experience. So I'm going to get that launched this week so people can start experiencing it. Jenny Gage and I have also been talking about, I'm going to be posting this on Facebook so people can know that we're live and can join us. Jenny Gage and I have been talking about starting to schedule some of our uncoupling sacraments and getting people to see what it looks like to do these divorce ceremonies so that people can get passionate about our work and how healing it can be to use godless spirituality to perform rituals that can actually transform people's lives. Fighting with Facebook right now. I think I'm actually fighting with my computer. I think my computer is really seriously slowing down since Microsoft updated Windows. Thanks a lot, Microsoft. I'll put this on my personal Facebook. Had a very interesting event happen. So Culch and I went live this week on Linger Longer after Wednesday service. And we had some guests come onto the program. Hey, Rio, Kim, we love you. Do you really have Windows 95? Awesome. But it's we had a couple of guests come on, and I was happy. I'm always happy to talk to people who are critical of what we're doing here. I don't have a problem with that. Drives viewers away from the stream, but neither here nor there. We are intellectually honest at the end of the day. People can tell me what they disagree with me about. I'm not sensitive and touchy about that. But then they mentioned that they might talk about me the next day on their podcast. And I went on that podcast and went, okay, I'm curious. Well, they're going to talk about me. They had made the whole episode. They talk for 3 hours on these episodes they do. And they'd made like a whole episode making fun of us on this podcast called Porch Time. And I'm like, okay. And it turns out these guys, they do not like me. They are these these ex-Mormon soft atheists or Mormon soft atheists, closet atheists maybe, uh, who just really dislike me and dislike what we're doing here. And I got to be honest with you, I'm into it. I can't just be out here pissing off Mormons, guys. I got to start pissing off some atheists too. You know, and it's interesting because like most atheists react immediately when I tell them, you know, I started a church for atheists, immediately react the way I used to react when people would say things like that. What? Stupid. I don't even miss church. Been out of this church 20 years. No, nothing was better. Oh, culture, it doesn't matter. They just didn't like us. But it's interesting, you know, there are a lot of atheists and a lot of soft atheists. Sorry, people who claim agnosticism. I am an agnostic too. Atheists are agnostics. That's what it is. We're just agnostics who don't like having long conversations about it. Because you say you're agnostic, people start preaching to you about, oh, so you could still be convinced. Well, yeah, we could all still be convinced there's a God, but please don't waste your time. So, and that's when you're like, I'm sick of telling them, please don't bother. That's when I go, I'm atheist. I'm a Dawkins 6. People who are atheists know what that means. Hopefully, if you've read The Selfish Gene, you know what that is. You know, but it's interesting because like inside the atheist community, there's a lot of toxicity, and there's a lot of people cannibalizing each other, basically, especially with people like Ayan Hirsi Ali coming out to try and, you know, chase the Christian wave and say that they are Christian, they are culturally Christian. Somebody let this puppy downstairs while I'm broadcasting. I hope Molly's home. Hold on. This is going to be super, super, super down to earth here broadcast. My wife has been out of town since Tuesday, and it was too snowy for her to get home last night, so she stayed with her girlfriend, who used to be my girlfriend. We're not talking about it, though. We're not talking about it. I'm not sore. It's because my wife stole my girlfriend. I'm actually not. I'm glad. I'm happy for both of them. So I've had 3 children and a not housebroken puppy for about a week. I'm doing fine. I'm doing fine. I did start working on my second job full time also this week, and I haven't been talking a lot about this. I don't want anybody. So the atheist that converted to Christianity. Yeah, Coach, that's right. Yeah, she claims that she is now a Christian, but then people are like, so you've been saved, you've been born again, and been washed in the blood of Christ, and she's like, well, no, but that's not the only kind of Christian that there is. Are you say it a little louder? Say it a little louder, Ayan. You want to be a part of that club? You just say that shit a little bit louder. You don't have to be born again to be a Christian. You just try. I am looking forward to you. You can't ride that wave and not do their shit. You have to do their shit. That's what it is. There's spiritual, it's called esoteric experience, esoteric community for a reason. I might have to let this puppy in. Hold on. You guys want to meet a puppy? All right, Hirsch. I know. Where's your mama? Where's your mama? She's supposed to be getting home. Come here. Come here. Come here. She bite me. She bite me, buddy. I'm gonna get introduced to the world. This little boy. His name is Hershey. They named him Horatio. That's not supposed to be allowed because I've always wanted to have a dog. His name is Horatio, but I want to have a German. I want to have a Great Dane Mastiff named Horatio, not a half Blue Heeler, half Chihuahua. He's like, I think he's like a quarter Chihuahua or something. So, but his nickname is Hershey. Hirsch McGursh. I am the only one that he growls out and bites like this, but he has started biting the other kids. The other kids. I talk about my children as if they're my other kids, but we're trying to train him not to. No, Hirsch. No bites. No bites. No bites, my son. I don't believe in hitting dogs, so it's been an uphill battle, but we're going to get there. We might have to do a little hunter time. Hunter time is what we call his going into his kennel for a couple of hours. Do you need hunter time? I do need to be the alpha. I've learned a little bit, a few tactics in terms of simulating bites so that he understands that bites are not okay. So we're getting it done. I'm gonna get better at it, but yeah, he is a sweet boy. He is a good boy, but you can't have him biting people. So, anyways, I'm hoping that whatever future Molly had in mind for herself when she got this dog, they're going to be very happy together. You should see them you should see them. You should see them in bed together. And you sneak into her room. Molly has her own room. I go into her room and she's got this puppy sitting under the covers with his little face poking out from the covers, and her face. She looks up at me, and they are the most adorable little thing. No, we don't do that. No bites. No bites. No bites. But he is a sweet boy. And he doesn't bite hard. It's just enough that, Jojo runs from him. Now, the interesting thing about it, though, is that Jojo, ever since this puppy came into our life, has started to push the puppy to keep him off of him, because the puppy likes to climb up on people because he's very needy. Little doggies are very needy creatures. And Jojo, was my pre-verbal child, has started to push back. No bites. No bites. No bites. No bites. And he started to push him off. Do you need to be explained? Do you need a hunter time? You do. Excuse me, friends. But Jojo has started to push the puppy off of him and say, no touchy, which he doesn't use words much. He says, no touchy. And he pushes the dog off of him. And now his new thing is that he finds the key to open the basement door and let the puppy downstairs. Go down there and then puts the key back. So the key exists so he won't come down and flood the basement when I'm locked in my office doing broadcasts and stuff. But so he's been coming down. I have dog hair all over me now. Delightful. Uh, and he's been opening it up to let the puppy downstairs. He's a clever boy. He eloped yesterday for the first time in a couple of years and made it around the corner of the house outside in nothing but his underpants. It's been a while since we had one of those. I I was grateful that we found him before the police did this time. Raising autistic children is the most treasured trauma of my life so far. Oh, hello from Scotland. What part of Scotland? Don't you love it when people from America impersonate your accent? Mary, welcome. Welcome here. I hope I didn't upset you just now. We are Americans and we are obnoxious people. But welcome. Do you say your name like Marie Curie? How do you say Curie? Curie. Edinburgh. I've been talking about Edinburgh lately. It is hard. Culture. People not watching the comments in the future will be going, what the hell conversation is happening in the chat? Edinburgh and the University of Edinburgh, they had a lecture series that I've been listening to an audiobook version of back in the early 1900s by William James. It was called Varieties of Religious Experience. It's been one of my tasks to educate myself about spiritual experiences for atheists so that we can have to, just like Curry, interesting, to enhance our experience of spiritual experiences for atheists, godless people. And I've been getting quite a lot out of it. But apparently, the University of Edinburgh just paid William James to come deliver this lecture series, but it was too good to just have it be a lecture series. So of course they published it as a book. And in it, that's where he was talking about, epilepsy, which is a curious thing that how often this keeps coming back up in my life. First of all, because we don't really think about how common epilepsy is in our culture. But I found out from Jules Del Sol's sermon that she is epileptic. One of my favorite artists of all time was epileptic, and his epilepsy is believed to have contributed to some of his greatest masterpieces. And either that or the what's the proper term, Jules? You were saying in the other chat. What there's a suppressant, whatever it's used for, medications used for suppressing hallucinations. No, excuse me, for suppressing seizures. Anti-epileptics, anti-seizures, anti-seizure meds. I don't know, but that's Vincent van Gogh. It's believed that the effects of his medication actually may be attributed to the way that he saw the sky in Starry Night, for the painting Starry Night. Anti-epileptics. Okay, cool. I go learning new things. I do know that it's pronounced Edinburgh. Edinburgh. My Scottish accent's not that good. I would like it to be. I've always wanted to see Scotland. Every American says that. But then I found out from I had a friend in college in Scottsdale who I asked him, who had a Scottish accent. And I remember going to him and I remember talking to him at a bar one night. I'm going to get my lint roller. I am covered in freaking dog hair. From Beautiful Creature. I do love that dog. But I never expected to love a small dog. And I had come up to him. I'm like, boy, you lucky bastard. And he said, I bet you have women just chasing you. I remember, this was me in college. This was 20 years ago. Over 20 years ago. And he looked at me and said, luck has nothing to do with it. I chose to move here. I was like, oh. I said, yeah, but You don't think that an American like me could go to Scotland and women would find me as exotic as they find you here in America? And you looked at me and said, "Don't be so sure." I was like, "Really?" This is me in college. I was still very toxic atheist. Oh, that's working beautifully. But so it's interesting to see how the atheist world is starting to implode on itself. And I'm here for it. Intellectually honest people that we are. I love Starry Night. I could talk about Vincent van Gogh. I could talk about Vincent all day. In fact, I've been writing about Vincent for my still unpublished book, All My Prophets Paint. But I'm close. I'm getting close. So Matt Dillahunty has been calling out Richard Dawkins for a while, and some of his transphobic comments. I still love Richard Dawkins. I really do. But the things he's been saying lately, I mean, Professor Dawkins is a little long in the tooth. I'm just going to say it that way. And he's showing the ideas, the cultural ideas of a bygone era, in my personal opinion. And I think it's good that Matt Dillahunty's been calling him out. Matt Dillahunty is becoming increasingly the face of, whatever atheism is now, since the end of the end of new atheism, if that's a thing that was new, or if that's a thing that ends. Apparently, it's over, and we are now in atheism plus. Sorry if you didn't get the memo. I'm not in charge of sending out the memos. This is probably like the dumbest looking thing for me to be doing right now. But if I weren't doing it, I'd just be looking at all the hair on my sports coat and going, "What the hell is that?" I don't even like my hair on my sports coat. That looks good. That's better. Talk hair on my shirt. I sent this picture to my partner who lives in Virginia, a picture of me wearing my sermonizing outfit. I have a couple of these shirts, only one of these jackets so far. I ordered a new jacket that looked really cool on the internet, and they sent me the wrong one. So, anyways, and they said, "Hot." Oh, yeah? You like that? I thought it was kind of basic, but all right, I'm into it. But Matt Dillahunty's been becoming increasingly one of the main voices of what's now atheism 3.0 or atheism plus. Another one that's interesting that gets called out. Oh yes, I know they're not Dillahunty fans. They mentioned they didn't like Matt Dillahunty, and then they mentioned that they didn't like me, and I went, "Oh, I like that though." I like that people who don't like Matt Dillahunty don't like me. And then they mentioned Richard Carrier, who I've had on the program, as you guys know. Actually, I think so far, my most watched video so far is me and Richard Carrier taking down, well, not really taking down, but exposing the Jesus mythicist elements of Jonah Barnes' claims. Jonah Barnes, if you don't know, wrote a book called The Key to the Keystone, about how Apocrypha, Christian Apocrypha, is revealing the origins of the Book of Mormon, and that the Book of Mormon is true. It's just so not true. But what they are discovering is everything that Jesus mythicists like me and Richard Carrier, if I could say me and Richard Carrier that way, I do think of Richard as a friend since we've been talking, which is about a decade now that Richard and I have been more or less talking, via email or, occasionally on Facebook Messenger. And, we believe that it is at least plausible that the story of Jesus of Nazareth started as a myth rather than a man. And every New Testament scholar, every Christian, and most atheists are want to just burn us down for it. And we just go back to back and go, yes, bring it. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. But everything that makes Jesus mythicism interesting to us, the same thing I talked about with Derek Lambert in my Christmas episode, the Merry Mythmas episode. Derek Lambert, if you don't know, has a great podcast called Myth Vision. You guys got to check out Myth Vision. It's amazing. And he considers himself no longer a mythicist, but Myth Vision was originally mainly a mythicist channel. It was all about Bob Price and Dr. Bob Price going live and answering people's questions about how this he is convinced as an atheist and as a New Testament scholar that Jesus very likely didn't exist, and as a man. And that all the stories of Jesus, they're not just the stories of a man that got aggrandized into a myth. They started as a myth. And then all these stories were euhemerized later, the stories that we now call the Gospels. And so we had this episode. It's still it's still the most viewed episode of Church for Atheists out there. And even after my amazing, groundbreaking, in my opinion, conversation with Dr. Anton Troyer. Did you guys watch Church for Atheists this week? I had Dr. Anton Troyer on the show. I'm still bowled over by it every day. And people who discovered this conversation have been messaging me within minutes of finishing it to go, Joe, this conversation was amazing. This guy is an incredible get. We were there principally to talk about Chief Mitiga and the appropriation of Ojibwe culture in the Mormon Heartlander movement, which we did get to. But I said, first, while I've got you, we can't just talk about this. I had him for 1 hour. And I said, which he didn't charge me for, by the way, which charge us for, which I was, grateful for, because we're the Church of Korihor is a little bit shoestring budget right now. Yeah. But I had him for 1 hour, and I said, if I have you for an hour, this man is one of my favorite reads. He wrote a book. I'm going to plug it again here. I've been plugging it all week, called Everything You Wanted to Know About Indians, But Were Too Afraid to Ask. Blew my mind. How I, a person who is liberal and pride myself on how woke I am. I do. I wear woke. I wear it. I wear it all day. I am woke AF. I love being woke. I am a woke ass atheist, man. And and yet this man in a book opened my eyes. Get the audiobook version if you're going to do it. I can't recommend it enough, because Dr. Troyer reads his own books, and he's got a great way of speaking. It's like listening to Sam Harris. We're going to get to him here in a minute, maybe. And just incredible, incredible voice. And so brilliant, and is able to communicate so effectively. And I mean, this guy's like my role model now. He is one of the best and most effective communicators, and yet one of the wisest and most well-educated people I've ever talked to. And I said, if I have you for an hour, I'm going to ask you questions about ritual in the Ojibwe culture. And I asked him about, while I was amazed at how Ojibwe coming of age rites of passage were so incredible, as I learned about them, how they do rites of passage. Because I was like, this is good, because we've been talking about rites of passage at the Church of Korihor. Maybe there's something wise. I don't want to steal what they do, right? Just like overview is our compassionate meditation, but I don't want it to be stealing from the Buddhists. But I do want us to have our own thing. And, so I said, this is an opportunity to ask the most brilliant person I've ever heard of about these rites of passage that they do for boys and girls in Ojibwe culture. I said, but they're very gendered. How do you navigate that in this day and age when gender is being acknowledged as being, fluid, as being a social construct that is fluid, not just between people, but even over epochs of somebody's life? And he told me about how, I have a trans nephew who's trans mask. and did the first. I'm going to say it wrong. It's like the first festival, which is also sort of the first hunt tradition in native culture. And he said it's fine. No, it went off without a hitch. There was no problem. Nobody raised any concerns. You just did it. And I was like, and he said, the thing is, ceremony, just like everything else in culture and in human experience, evolves, and you just let it evolve, and it's not hard to just let it be, let it grow, let it become its own thing. It's so amazing. They do this thing in Ojibwe culture where they have a first festival. It's supposed to coordinate, I believe, with the first hunt idea, this concept of a first hunt, and where boys who come of age to be recognized as men in the nation and in the people will be brought to this festival where everybody's eating and they're carrying on doing their ceremonies. And four times somebody comes to that boy and offers him food. And the first time he turns it away and says, "No, I'm thinking of, oh, forgive me, it's something like, I'm thinking of the children who haven't eaten." And then a second time and a third time and then a fourth time. And each time he says, "No, I'm thinking of the elders," or "No, I'm thinking of those who couldn't make it here today," or something like that. It's all about how he won't eat until the rest of the community eats. And then on the fourth time, they say something like, "Everyone has eaten, and you need your strength so you can hunt again." And then he eats. And I said, you know, I just think that in Western culture we don't have anything like that. And I said, I don't want to steal your thing, but what is it? What is the nut of this? What is the core of this? And he said, I actually think because I said, there's a thing in Western culture now that I think everybody's trying to get at, and how we don't know how to raise our children to be better prepared for their future because we don't teach them to be resilient. And resilience is like the thing everybody's talking about. How can we teach our children to be more resilient? I know I am. I'm thinking about with three children on the spectrum. I'm thinking about this all the time. You can only medicate them so much. You can only feed them better foods to a certain degree. You can only, teach them so much meditation. It takes a combination of all of it to teach children how to be resilient. But then, and he said to me, I take my kids, a couple of them at a time, with me, because he's got like 8 kids or something like that. He has a blended family. And he says, I take at least a couple of kids with me when I do a fast. Now, that's something I hadn't thought about in years, because I hated fasting when I was Mormon. I hated it. But he says, he's like, I do a fast occasionally when I need to. And he says, and it's interesting because like the first couple of hours that you're doing a fast, it's tough. You miss the convenience of eating whenever you want, and, eating the foods that you want. And you start to think you're not going to make it. You start to suffer a little bit. And then it dawns on you as that moment passes and you settle into a mode of thinking where it's like, okay, well, I've committed to doing this, and I'm gonna see it through. And he says, and suddenly you realize that I've done this before. I know this place, and I'm gonna be okay. Morning, Gene. Is it Super Bowl Sunday after all? I don't even know. I don't even fucking know. Happy Sunday anyway. Happy second Saturday. But he says you start to realize that you're going to be okay, that things are fine, and suddenly your whole life comes into focus. And he says not only that, but like the ants crawling on the ground get bigger in your vision, and the sound gets sharper, and you start looking around and realizing all the things that you miss about nature because your brain is tuned to this fast-paced frequency. And he said, and it's so important for men. Again, some of these conversations, I talk to the smartest people. I talk to the smartest people, and I learn so much. It's like I am on a journey of one man getting a freaking PhD in what it means to be human. And I need it because I don't know if you've heard about this, but I'm an alien boy robot. And this is, I thought that I was masking pretty well at being human. And I get compliments, people saying that they think that I am human like you and don't realize that I am an alien boy robot. But I learned so much about being human from Anton Troyer. I learned so much about being human from so many of these guests on Church for Atheists. I've really grown quite a bit as a person, which I thought psychedelics and dating a person who is a better reader than I am. You're welcome, Winter. We're going to, had really made me become a better man, become a wiser man and a wiser person. And then I started talking to people who are smarter than me, people like Jules, people like Britt Hartley, and people like Jenny Gage, and learn to shut my mouth and listen and repeat back out loud some things that I'm catching about what I didn't understand. Rob Lauer was one of my favorite interviews. I've learned so much from Rob Lauer. And then Richard Carrier. I said I was going to come back around to this. This is now officially my Adderall and caffeine ramble. I've known Richard Carrier for a decade. And I didn't know how much I would learn from him in 1 hour of actually getting him on the horn and actually talking to him. And anyways, but I learned so much from this with Dr. Troyer, and I thought, do we need to do something like this? Do we need a fast? Ugh. Like, it's a part of me, this ex-Mormon part of me, kicks back on that word so much. I'm like, ugh, no, let's not do it. No, not even if it's good for me. I won't do it. And then he said something to me. He said, it's amazing, though, especially with these younger generations, that when we do these fasts, the thing that's hardest for them is giving up screens for a while. And he said, and that it's a new kind of fasting. Nope, it's no screen time. No screens. Devices away. Give them here. Put them away. We're going to spend some time here and now and with each other and connecting with each other, with nature, with ourselves. And he says, and that has done more to help these younger people develop. That is their fast. No screens time. And I thought, ooh, wait a minute. Something there. There's something there. Should we have something like that? Like a tradition where we just get together and we bring people who have developing brains, maybe adults and, youths. Any fans of the new girl out there? Is it the new girl? Yeah, the new girl. Youths. And get them together safely. Ideally with guardians. And people who are fingerprinted and background checked in the Church of Korah. Still working out how we're going to do that with luminaries. And get them together and say, this is our no screens activity. What is that activity? I've been talking for a while about we need a ceremony that involves a kind of candlelight vigil where everybody gets candles and we gather together at a park somewhere because we don't have churches. And we gather together at like a park, or we gather together as a kind of protest space or something. And everybody huddles together. Of course, this is an idea I developed in the wintertime. And we all light candles and then we sing songs and we do some kind of journey together. I talked about it as maybe this is like a thing that we do for solstice. Now we need to start thinking about what is the vernal equinox going to look like? What is a vernal equinox celebration for the Church of Korihor? Because I think people would be so interested if we did something really cool. I want to talk to people about it. I can't come up with all the good ideas. That's why I encourage people, please become contributors to the Church of Korihor. My sister says that people will get turned off by the fact that it's $2 a month and would rather pay $24 a year. I'd have to create a whole separate plan for that. If people really think that that's the difference because you just don't like having a monthly contribution, another monthly thing coming out of your bank account, I get it. But if people really think that's what we should do, but we do need to be able to raise funds to be able to cover basic costs, because we're about to purchase some bookkeeping software. We're about to start really doing all of our bookkeeping in a better way. Luckily, I have my sister Nikki, who is better at stuff like this, who has volunteered to give of her time. I hate asking women for their time for free. I hate it. I just don't have money to pay them. And so if you volunteer, I don't have the strength or money to turn you away if you volunteer to give me your time, to give the church time for free. We have to take it because we need the help. But my plan is to start paying people when the church starts generating revenue, which will largely be from the sale of books once we get some my books published. And I plan from here forward to donate all of my books that I write to the Church of Korihor, so that we don't have to ask people to pay 10% of their income. We can run the revenue for the church based off of the sale of books, which it's a good way of making dough, especially with audiobooks. I don't know if you know about this, but Audible content is like the hottest rage right now. Like there's whole training programs on how to make money on Audible. I talked yesterday about how Max Sievers basically funded the German Freethinkers League back in the 1920s and 30s by taking over the cremation market in Germany. I didn't talk much about this, but in Germany, their water table, in Germany and Austria, the water table is very, very high. And so periodically they have breakouts of diseases that were dormant because the water, as the rains get heavier, the water table would rise. Absolutely, each sermon could be a book almost. Well, maybe a batch of sermons. So that's what All My Prophets Paint is basically. It's a series of godless sermons that are only going to be published in book format. As the water table rises, the graveyards would contaminate the water supply. And so the epidemiologists in Germany started to call for people to start getting cremated and to start removing the remains of people in graveyards. And that's a good thought, Jules. I'm looking now at about 12 of them right now with 12 at a time in All My Prophets Paint. I so have loved writing this book. I love art. I really wish I had time to paint. I have been missing doing my painting. So I may wind up doing some more of that here and soon. And maybe even one thing I've always wanted to do, I tried it a little bit, but it didn't work out, is to do live broadcasts where I just paint and people can join us. But in any event, and watch as I paint. I have loved this process so much about exploring what these painters have done, and how it reflects the epochs of their lives, and how what it means to me through the lens of perhaps the most wise and brilliant man I've ever read, apart from Arthur Schopenhauer, which is Dr. Rollo May. Anyway, get back to this. Epidemiologists in Germany started to get people to get cremated and to remove the remains of people in graveyards and move them into mausoleums. And the German church was against it because cremation shows that you don't feel confidence and faith. It shows a lack of faith in the resurrection of Christ. And it has nothing to do with the fact that the church makes money by selling grave plots. So the atheists swooped in because they were the ones who were courageous enough to stand up against the German church. That's just how they called both mainly the Protestant church. Of course, Lutheranism started in Germany. The Reformation is strong in Germany, always has been. And, they were the ones who stood up to the church and said, we will start our own cremation services. And they largely financed the German Freethinkers League, which was up until that point the largest community of atheists and agnostics really anywhere in the world, formal organization anywhere in the world, at nearly 600,000 or around 600,000 Germans and Austrians. And the way they primarily financed it, in addition to people paying dues so that they could receive the newsletter, mainly written by Max, is that they owned crematoriums, and they paid for it, and it, the movement basically paid for itself. And so when I say, Max took their money when he saw that, who was coming to power in Germany, which I've been talking a lot about him, so I'm going to try and be careful right now. When who came to power in Germany, he, Max was, saw that they were going to come for the socialists first, and everybody knew that atheists in Germany were mainly socialists, like him. He was a passionate democratic socialist and socialist. Originally a member of the Communist Party, didn't care for that, and so he became a democratic socialist. And then he got into the crematorium business, when nobody else was, when people were too afraid to get into it because the church preached against them at the pulpit. And he's like, I don't care about church. I'm an atheist. Who gives a shit? And but in Germany at that time, atheist wasn't a very common thing to say. I don't even know what the German word for atheist is, but they would say at the time, people who were atheists and agnostics, the word they would use was Freidenker, which means free thinker. I love that. I love that shit. Are you kidding me? That's great. But I've done a lot of thinking ever since I came up with the idea for the Church of Korah. I'm like, what is our version of crematoriums? So we don't have to ask people to give 10% of their income. As I've been saying from the beginning, it's like, if you were going to give 10% of your income, if you were going to give your tithing, I would rather, even if you were able to write it off against your taxes. So basically you're giving your tax dollars to the church. Don't give it to this church. Don't give it to the central church. Don't give it to me and the heralds. I hate that idea. I'm like, no, let's not be like them at all. Let's not do that at all. I'd rather you gave it to a mission of the Church of Korah that grows food for your community. Somebody was mentioning in the comments, I believe it was, wasn't it Lisa who was saying that you grow food in your backyard, or used to grow food in your backyard and take it to the co-ops, take it to the local food banks, and they're so grateful to receive it. That's what I'm talking about. That if you're going to give 10% or 15% or whatever percent of your income, even let's say 5% of your income, to something associated with the Church of Korah, don't send it to us here. I have a job. I have 2 jobs. I'm fortunate to have 2 jobs. That feels weird to say, but I'm lucky that I have 2 jobs. And so that I can provide for myself and my kids. And, and Molly has a job full time, makes good money. Well, I mean, it makes good money for a couple people like us. And, and I mentioned before, between the three jobs that Molly and I work full time, I really work 2 part-time jobs. Don't stress about me. I work about 60 hours a week. And between these 2 jobs, Molly's 40 and my 60, we make a 6-figure income. And, we barely make it paycheck to paycheck. On a rent on a townhome, I mentioned before, there's 4 bedrooms, and a living room that's now my bedroom downstairs, and including this room is a bedroom. This should probably be my bedroom, but it's my studio. and then three full bathrooms for $1,500 a month. And here in Utah County, that's like shocking right now that you can get something for that. We're barely making it. We're on a 6-figure income. Oh, it was Tessa who's saying that she grows food out there. We should probably start putting pronouns in there. I hate to think that I misgender anybody. I'll start putting my pronouns in too. I am he, him. But yeah, so it's like, I mean, imagine if we could use this tax code that churches use to make their prophets and priests and kings rich, and we'll use it instead to take care of each other, actually do what supposedly this is supposed to be for. Don't send it in to the government, to the central governing body of the church, which we do have one. I do think that hierarchy is necessary at some level. That's why I love the idea that in the future, the hierarchy of the Church of Korihor will include women, and why I was so grateful that the first woman I invited to be a part of this said yes right away. And in the future, I see that women will be a big part of the leadership of the Church of Korihor, as will trans people and people of color, BIPOC people. And so, and then of course, we will have white dudes too. Okay. Even I will qualify so far as a white dude for a while. So they have some representation. Because I do still mostly think. Are we talking about me over there? Oh, we're talking about Jacob's pronouns are ass and clown. Boy, Jacob really has leaned into it, hasn't he? I feel I can't tell you how conflicted I am lately about this whole Jacob situation. I don't know how many of you know about this. Our dear Jenny Gage has been super traumatized. Those of you who have contact with Jenny, you might reach out to her with some love and support. She's had a hard week. I won't let you in on all the details. Suffice it to say, I have had to apologize to Jenny this week. Some things that I said that were inappropriate and didn't even think I had. And when I realized, shit, this is my toxicity reemerging, I said, listen, Jenny, I don't have any excuse. I don't have any excuse. That wasn't right. I'll do better. Somebody else close to me was offended, was hurt, not offended, hurt by something I said. And I reached out to her. And I said, I have no excuse. And this person very generously told me, Joe, I'm not even upset with you. And I said, okay, you're being generous with me. I feel that. I said, but it's not okay, even if you don't feel hurt. I just want you to know, for myself, for my benefit, I'm going to watch my language. I'm going to be careful about things that I say. And I'm going to become a better person. And I don't need you to acknowledge it or reward me for it. I just want you to know, for my own sake, I'm going to become a better man out of this. So for what it's worth, I'm sorry. And I could grow. I could become a better person. I could learn to appreciate where the line is, and I could listen more. People compliment me on my listening skills when they see Church for Atheists and see my conversations with people. But we could all do better. I'm shocked at how bad I still am at it, especially listening to queer people. I do it a lot, and I could still get so much better at it. And listening to young people, that's been a real big deal to me lately. Listening to not only my children, but when they tell me about their friends, and when they tell me about their community, and when I learned about my partner's friends, or partner's kids, and what they're going through. Speaking of listening, I learned that kids are having a different experience than what we have been going through. Elijah's talking to somebody. I was only eavesdropping to see if it was Molly. Molly's supposed to be coming home at some point today. but uh, but Jenny got called out by Jacob Hansen on his program, Thoughtful Faith, which has nicknames. We go hard on Jacob Hansen. We do lean into him hard and do expect him to just take it. But he brought into one of his videos a very sensitive video from Jenny Gage, where she talks about being trafficked by the Mormon church. And then put together the most problematic video I think I've seen come out of one of these Mormon channels in a while. Where, my immediate reaction when she sent me this video, because I had seen like the cover of it, I'd seen the thumbnail and said, stupid. Oh, I'm not even going to give it the time of day. And I had no idea that he'd called her out in that video. And so I'm like, I guess I'm going to have to watch this thing. Sometimes his shit is so toxic. I have to perform a little energetic hygiene. I learned this from an employer of mine who does this, believes in quantum field hygiene. I don't really believe that quantum field I don't believe in that. I don't believe in energies and the way these people do, but I don't talk people out of it. When people talk to me about astrology, I don't talk them out of it. There's no need to do that. That's not helping. And but I tell you, I believe in attention hygiene. I believe in not giving your attention away for free to everybody all the time and to things that are just going to overwhelm you and make you exhausted and tired. And I think that's a big part of why Anton Schroyer's advice to me this week is about, maybe getting a little fasting from screen time could be really productive for everybody, especially people in Western culture. And I went, that's so true. It's this practice of saying, this dear friend, I don't want to talk too much about other people's traditions or about my people who provide my livelihood. He has this amazing practice called quantum field hygiene. And don't at me if people go looking for him and his work. This is his work and it's not mine. But he does this thing where he does this cord cutting kind of ceremony with people. He says, you imagine a cord going out to all the people in your life who rely on you, and feel the tug of that cord, that energetic cord on you all the time. And then he says, you take a laser sword, and like from Star Trek, he says. I'm like, it's Star Wars. It's called a lightsaber. Whatever. It's not the point. He says, you take that laser, and you just go and snap each of those cords. Snap. And when it feels wrong, you remind yourself, it's okay. They're still there. I'm still here. But you just say to it, you welcome that resistance. You welcome it. And you say, it's all right. I am doing what I need to do for me. I'm still here for you. I'll come back. You'll reestablish that. It's easy. You'll reestablish that cord. But right now, I can't care for you until I am taking care of me. I can't tell you how many people, grown adults, I've seen doing this ceremony, reduced to tears, and the sigh of relief people have, especially women. You can see women, you see their shoulders drop down, like their body language, their posture changes when they do this. And suddenly the relief, because these people, especially women, carry so much, carrying everybody in their circle, all the time. And then we wonder why we're exhausted all the time. Because even when you're not in the presence of people that you love, you're kind of carrying them still. And we don't have enough processes for putting it down. You got to set it down, set it by a while. And what do? We eat. In America, especially, we eat. We eat carby things. I learned this from him. He's like, people talk about substance abuse. And he said, I think we ought to talk about carbohydrate abuse. He didn't say it that way, but that's the way I heard it. He said chips. He's like, don't think of chips as addictive, but people go to the chips. He's like, oh, so much with the chips. And don't even realize every time that your brain and your body say to you, let's get some chips, man. Let's get some chips. It's carbs. Your body calling for carbs to get energy to bear up all the people in your life you energetically bear up, even when they're not in the room. And I went, I think I probably learned more from this guy about learning to listen to people from different traditions than mine. I learned more about it probably from this guy than I have from anybody else. This guy who's a very dear friend of mine, and I'm grateful for. I'm grateful he continues to employ me after 15 years. Yeah, 15 years this year. And I said to him, he said to me, why do you always, he's like, why are you suddenly on all this kick about atheism? And I was like, I'm an atheist. And he goes, to me, you guys, he looks at me and goes, I don't think so. And I'm like, really? You didn't know? He's like, when did you decide you're an atheist? And I'm like, 2001, when I was a Mormon missionary in South America. He's like, the whole time I've known you, you've been an atheist. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, I don't buy it. So it's been an interesting journey, and I've been through a time. And he's like, well, okay, call it what you want, but what is this about? And I've told him we haven't ever talked about the Church of Korihor, he and I. Some other people in his organization, I may have mentioned it in passing, but he's like, here's the thing. He said, in India, there's a story about a guru who, he said, it was this very wise guru, and he found out that somebody had come to the ashram where he was, where his disciples were working, and looking for food and a place to sleep. And they had food and they had room, but they turned him away. And he said, why? And they said, oh, that person's an atheist. And he said, and I told them, it doesn't matter whether they believe in God. We believe in God. So you go back out there and you find him and you get him and you bring him back. And he just kind of looked at me, and I went, what am I supposed to learn from this man? And he's like, well, what do you think? And I said, I think that if serving other people because you feel compassion and because you realize that you are not better than other people and that other people's struggle is your struggle, if that's spiritual connection, then my atheist ass is experiencing spiritual connection. And he's like, good enough for me. And we've been good friends. We've been good friends for years now. That's true, Lisa. Lisa mentions that sometimes you have to permanently cut those cords. I do think that's true. I do. And I've had to do it. And it's not easy. I recently found out how much to share. I recently found out that one of my siblings, who I disconnected from a few years ago and said, we'll stay disconnected as long as it takes, recently disconnected from my parents and from my other siblings. and was very toxic towards them. And I wish this person all the best. I hope they do some healing. But no, there's no law that says that your family of origin is a permanent part of your life. They're a permanent part of your past. You're going to have to accept that. But they don't have to be a part of your future. And it's, I think that's, I've said for a long time, that's one of the things I think that really makes up what it means to be a grown up, is that you realize your parents aren't perfect. Your parents don't know what they're doing. And you might have to become a parent before you do it, but before you can make that peace. But you don't have to. You don't have to become a parent. That also is another thing that we sometimes treat it like you have to do it. You do not. You do not. There is no rule book here that says that you have to honor your elders or honor your mother and father. It's not true. You don't have to. You, if they don't honor you, you can choose not to honor them. The rule book that says no, you owe it. We have discovered that rule book is bullshit. Okay, there is no rule book here. The closest thing to the rule book is you're going to need to do some hygiene of the people in your life, and you have to let them not. You have to decide people who are toxic to you don't have to be cut off permanently, but they might. And they might choose to cut themselves off from you permanently. And if that's their journey, wish them well. And you could wish them well without hating them, without feeling animosity or wanting vengeance towards them, and say, you know what? I get that you're on your journey. This could be lovers in your life. It can be your children. How many people have had to do this with children who, have been lost to substance abuse long before they are lost to our world, and have had to say, if every time I try to help you, you steal from me. If every time I help you, you lie to me. I understand it's your illness, that you are in the illness, and I want to be here. I want to help you. But as of now, frankly, you're dead to me. Because I just can't, I can't do it forever. Nobody can do it forever. And you have to take care of yourself to be able to take care of those people who are honoring that relationship, honoring that commitment to you. And some people are going to cut you off from their lives. And then there are healthy ways of doing it too. Jenny and I have been talking since we came up with our first concepts and ideas for the uncoupling ceremony, our divorce ceremony, that you can come up with. Jenny and I. Jenny was my first guest on Church for Atheists about ritual, how to create a ritual for the Church of Korihor. And we have talked so many times. We talk every week about how this will take shape, and what's working, what's not working. And and she said, here's the thing. Her divorce from her husband, who was cheating on her with a 19-year-old escort when she found out that he wasn't faithful. Her divorce from him was angry and violent. It was violent. He was violent towards her. He hurt her, and that's part of why it was so hurtful when she found out that Jacob Hansen had used this very toxic video, frankly, with a very hopeful message from a woman who's still in the Mormon Church. And I wanted with all my heart to just say, Jenny, this video is stupid. He's holding up this Mormon girl as the example of how everything that you say about the church isn't true. Everything. He also included Maven in there, included a clip of Maven crying on Mormon stories. It was super insensitive. Super insensitive. And he had included a clip from Alyssa Grenfell in there. And I went, boy, now I'm glad now I know why I didn't watch this video from the outside. This is upsetting. And then he used this video of this Mormon girl basically talking about how growing up as a Mormon girl, she felt so much pressure to be fit, which is the word for skinny. in Mormon, because Mormon is a language. Yes, it is. And Coach, thank you, Coach. We have men backing this up, if that means anything. And, and took that language, and took these clips. And then this girl, he put in this clip of this woman, this Mormon woman, about how much pressure she felt as a Mormon girl to be skinny and pretty and cute and smart and loving to get the attention of men. And this is the video that's about how he's cutting in the video from the church about, I believe it's from the church itself, from the actual LDS church, about how this woman is experiencing how beautiful it is to be Mormon, to be a Mormon woman. And she talks about growing up as a Mormon, how much attention she had to put on keeping her body fit. Again, that's Mormon for skinny. Keeping her and being loving and nurturing and caring so that she could get the attention of a man who would choose her. And I went, you're validating everything Alyssa Grenfell has said, everything that Jenny Gage has said, everything that Maven has said. If you listen to women, you see they are the women in the Mormon culture, in the Mormon arena, the Mormon sphere, are crying out to be heard. And they're not getting listened to by the church. They're not getting listened to in their families. They're not being listened to by their spouses. And we ought to be listening, not just those of us men who think of women and think of them as sexual conquest, but need to think about women in the sphere and immediately remind ourselves that's our mothers and our sisters and our daughters. That is our trans women in our families. These women are crying out to be heard. And then to make it and say, well, it's not so bad. Look at this girl. And the Mormon girl, the still Mormon girl, cries out to say, I put so much pressure on myself and I let the culture put so much pressure on me to be pretty, to be lovable, so that a man would choose me. I finally got to BYU, or I think it's BYU, Idaho, one of those. I finally got the man of my dreams. Oh, such a tragic story. Such a tragic story. Heard it so many times, seen it so many times. And then he, without warning, he dumped me, she says. He didn't, we had a date picked out to go to the temple, get everything that she was promised. In the Mormon church, they call this your Prince Charming taking you to your castle. And the castle is the temple. Imagine why Alyssa Grenfell and Jenny and Maven talk about going to the temple for the first time to find out that going to your castle means you put on these frumpy, ugly, and all white outfits, dresses that Maven in the clip that Jacob cut into his video says it's like a burqa but worse. Whoa. Okay, I feel it. Look, those of us who went to the temple, we saw it. We know what they're talking about. That they had to cover their faces when the prayers were said. And that it's symbolized. I don't know that it's ever written anywhere why women have to cover their faces when the true order of prayer, I'm just calling this out, there's sacred things here that we're just talking about. That many of us, myself included, covenanted never to talk about outside of the temple. We're just breaking that covenant because it was made with a God that doesn't exist anyway. But, all of this is showing up in this girl's Mormon story that she's giving to the Mormon church. It's like John Deleyn's Mormon stories, only the first half. And I'm sitting here watching this video that he cut in, and I'm like, it's like the first half of a Mormon story. I said and wanted to say to Jenny in that moment that she sent me this video, And so I sat and watched it because at that point, felt like I had to because he was calling out my friend. Never mind the second herald of the Church of Korihor, my friend. And I'm sitting there watching it. I'm going, I can't wait to see this girl's Mormon story. I can't wait to see how this story ends when she's telling it to John Dehlin. I'm doing a full on rant now, so I am going to give another aside here and full ADHD here. Again, Adderall is with us. Who can be against us? I had this conversation. Some of you may have heard. Was it last week with Kai Van Leuven, the guy who runs Jesus for Atheists or Jesus for Mormons? I bet there is a Jesus for Atheists channel. Somebody should make one. Jesus for Mormons. He's an ex-Mo, was Christian, and a great guy. We had a great conversation. And he told me at the end, he told me how even as an ex-Mormon and a Christian, how much he hates John Dehlin and hates, well, he didn't say hate John Dehlin, how much he hates Mormon stories. And he thinks that they really are just hurting people. And I listened. I gave him room to express. And he asked me, he's like, don't you agree? And I said, no. And I said, look, I'll go with you this far. I don't listen to most Mormon stories anymore. Because again, it brings me down. It brings me down emotionally to revisit all that trauma. And I'm trying to listen, spend my time doing this hygiene and focusing on the future more than on the past. And I know it's just like how I don't watch basketball anymore, because my autistic brain will get so jacked up about how the Jazz are doing. I since I moved to Utah, I still haven't gotten into the Jazz. When I was back in Arizona, even when they were shit, they might still be shit. I got so into the Suns because a friend of mine turned me onto it when I was in elementary school. And I would just I couldn't miss a game. And I had to watch it. I had to cheer every time that I get so into basketball. It's insane how my ADHD autism spectrum brain just goes wild for being a sports fan. That's why I don't do sports ball. I don't have time. I don't have time for sports ball. I got shit to do. And it was the '93 Sun season in college. You were there. You remember that? Do you remember KJ and Charles Barkley? I mean, do you remember the Dream Team? You remember freaking Danny Ainge? Remember Tom Chamberlain? Tom Chamberlain? Oh my gosh. Freaking crazy, man. That was such see? I had to turn off of it. I had to turn it off. That was the season, man. I had to turn off from it. Okay, well, we almost beat the Bulls. We almost beat them. We almost beat Michael Jordan, man. He was such an amazing player, though. They were so good. The Bulls were just so good. Fuck. In college, a friend of mine got me turned on to the San Antonio Spurs. My roommate was from Texas, and or had lived part of his life in Texas. Tom Chambers. It was Chambers. I went to church with his nephew. And stupid. How many years later I'm still bragging about that? I did. I went to church with one of his nephews. And shit. Where's it going? Oh, John Dehlin's Mormon Stories is like that for me. When I get hung up in the trauma of everything that happens in these stories and I start connecting to these people's stories, I get freaking passionate about it. I become an absolute warrior for Mormon stories. And I don't have time to be doing that. That's why I don't do sports ball. Can't do the sports ball. I will become obsessed. I know myself. And when I'm obsessed with Mormon stories, it can really bring me down. Now, I'm not saying that people shouldn't watch it, and I'm not saying that I would never do it, because I've said for a while that I would do that. If John Dehlin wanted me to come on Mormon Stories, I would so happily do it, especially now that we have the Church of Korihor. Even if I'm not here to talk about, even if I don't go on to talk about that, because he doesn't always love talking about other people's organizations. If I was just to tell my story, but so people can become acquainted with me enough that they can find out what's going on with the Church of Korihor, because I am so passionate about telling people how incredible the work we are doing here is, even as small a scale as it is. But I'm watching Jacob Hansen's video, and I'm going, this is the first half of this girl's Mormon story. When she leaves the church, they're going to regret they ever put this up there. There are people who have been in Mormon videos, in the Mormon church's videos, promoting it, who then gave Mormon stories, or then started their own channels. Alyssa Grenfell was in a video by the church, and she's talked about it. I think this is why they are being more selective, or at least should be more selective and careful for their own benefit about who they put into videos for the church, because people leave the church. Look at what happened with David Archuleta. All the boy did, all this brilliant young man did, was to speak his truth about his sexuality and the trauma, the religious trauma. Doesn't matter how many people said, boy, we were all waiting on that. Doesn't matter. This was his chance to say what was really happening. And then his mother got her chance. It's, again, a story we see again and again. Somebody leaves the church, their mother does too. These mothers who look to them and realize, I didn't even know how much trauma, religious trauma, these children of mine, these people I love, were going through in my household. Or if I did, I either looked away because it was too painful, or because I didn't want to believe that it was happening. And David's mother left with him. And that story, I'm sure when Mormons talk about it today, they say it with vitriol and vinegar. But I love it. Oh, how many of you remember when that happened? And she came out and talked about it. And she gave a Mormon story interview, I believe. And it was powerful. It was moving. It was like, I don't love the church more than I love my son. Wow. Gorgeous. It was so powerful. I'm watching the story, this Mormon story, this girl's Mormon story, and thinking, he doesn't even realize he's calling out Jenny, our Jenny, and doesn't even realize how the person he's calling her out with is escaping the trad wife trap that Jenny talks about on her show, on her channel, Life Take Two. He's pointing it out. He is not showing. He is showing the before of what Jenny's story of the before and after. The before that she is trying to reach out to women like the girl in this video to say, don't buy it. And this girl gets a call to serve in the Philippines and talks about how hard it is, how hard it was to be a missionary for 18 months in the Philippines. And how in that process, she discovered a relationship with Christ. I get it. I did the same thing. So that means that the experience of women in the church is not toxic. Are you paying attention? Are you paying attention? Jacob, these women are crying out. They are trying to speak. I know that Jacob knows better. That's what really bothers me about it. Oh, wow. I knew Danny Ainge was Mormon. I didn't know how Mormon he was. But I mean, being at the temple or not going to temple service. Is he still active in the church? I don't know. Are any of them? But all I could do was to reply to Jenny and say, Jenny, I'm so sorry. That's wrong. He's wrong. And that was insensitive. That was mean. We go mean on him. We do. We say mean things about Jacob and these other apologists. And I'm not apologizing for it. But if I go over the line, I hope somebody will point it out to me, and I'll apologize. Jenny contacted I I don't know how much of this she talks about. I think she did. I watched her video she posted 2 a.m. this morning, responding to it. But she sent me the text messages between her and Jacob, who are on a direct contact basis. They have each other's numbers, so they text. And he took no ownership of it, none. Basically told her, you posted a video in a public forum. I can do whatever I want with it. And that's true. That's true. I do it. I did it yesterday with this guy at Rise Zion. But I did invite him then, and I reiterate that invitation now. Cameron, I believe his name is, at Rise Zion. Come on my show and tell me off to my face. I'll take it. If you're in, I think he's in Utah. I think you want to meet up someplace face to face. I promise you I won't get angry. I promise you I won't get violent. I don't know if anybody's worried about that. I am an angry person, but I don't hit people. I don't hurt people. Yeah, no, they talk. He was on an episode. He invited her on to his show. I won't say any more about that. They arranged a recording for their show, for his show. Yeah, I'm not talking about Jacob Madison. I'm talking about Cameron. I'll go to Jacob. I'll go to Reno and see him face to face. Jacob, if I'm calling you out and I'm being unfair, you're welcome to tell me to my face. I'm a safe person. I'm a safe person to confront. I will feel it, but I'm into it. Call me out if I'm wrong. Okay, but that was insensitive and cruel, what he did to Jenny. And I can't help but point out that it encapsulates exactly what Jenny complains about in Mormon culture, that Mormon men don't listen to women. Most men don't listen to women. I don't listen to women enough. I know this about me. I see it. I feel it. And I see how it has hurt people that I love. And I can only apologize so much. All of us, we can only apologize so much. If we're not showing it in the way we change, it won't make any difference. We have to become better. And we don't have the problem for us as Mormon men and ex-Mormon men is that we don't have enough role models of what that looks like. And so we have to become our own role models. We especially have to become role models for boys in our society and show that masculinity doesn't have to be toxic. There could be healthy masculinity. The episode, this has come up a few times because it's not obvious what episode it is. It's the one, if you go to Thoughtful Faith, it's called, Is Mormonism Bad for Women? I think is what it officially is called. That's what the thumbnail looks like anyway. Yeah, first he puts in Alyssa, then he puts in Jenny, talking about being trafficked by the church. That's strong language. But is she wrong? Call her out for being wrong if she's wrong. I think she's not wrong. I say she's right. That is what happened to her. And we all have to own our piece of it. I'll be a little candid with you right now. It's become a big part of my guilt in recent years. I married a Mormon girl who had a bedroom in her parents' home when I married her 20 years ago. 20 years this December. And for more than a decade, it was a dream come true for both of us. I feel. We started a family. We didn't know we'd have 3 children on the autism spectrum. We probably should have suspected. I kind of suspected that I would have at least one autistic child, and that my trials in life were because I was autistic and just hadn't been diagnosed because nobody knew that's what it was. And I ended up with 3 kids on the autism spectrum, and I love all of them more than anything in the world. They're my favorite people in the whole world. And I'll brag, as I have before, that I'm sure that's not in the least bit a part of the fact that that half of the DNA of every cell in their bodies is my DNA. I get it. I see myself in them. I see the best parts of me in them, and I love it. And I see my autism. I see it there. It's not my favorite part of me. And it's not my favorite part of them, except that they're all artists. All my kids are artists. And I made this family with Molly starting 20 years ago. But I had an opportunity after I was spent 2 years in South America. I was in and came back here, and I became a return missionary. And I got a job partially because my father got me a job, as has happened again and again throughout my life. And I was able to make enough money that I was able to tell my parents to fuck off, which was not cool, but was a part of my process, part of my maturing process. And moved into an apartment that I shared with a guy that went to film school with me, and we made our own life. And I learned how to negotiate for late rents. I learned how to ask for an advance on my paycheck so that I could pay bills. I learned how to do things for myself and to be independent and be my own person, and what it is that I wanted in life, and what I wanted in a partner, and what I wanted in my spiritual progression. I tell people, as you all know, I became an atheist while I was a missionary in South America, but I toyed with paganism for a bit, like many people. Like my wife is very into astrology and into learning about these other traditions and energetic traditions. I try to be supportive, and because I know this is her journey, and I think it's a beautiful journey that she's on. Just because she didn't resort to atheism like I do doesn't mean that I don't love her or that I don't love the journey that she's on. And I love that for her. I flirted with it. I had time in the first few years after I dropped out of film school to discover myself and what I wanted and what my future would look like. And she didn't. She married me at 21, a week before she turned 21. She couldn't legally drink when we got married. We did. Mormon shotgun wedding. Went back to our apartment. She'd been living with me for 2 months. We'd met 8 weeks before we got married. And we built a family and a life together. And over the course of those 20 years, she's grown up and discovered what she really wants in life. And a large part of that probably isn't going to involve me in the future. I don't know yet. We're still exploring that. Well, it's always going to involve me. I'm the father of her children. And we have these cherished memories, and I do cherish them. But I've always known, and we've always been honest, that we'll say to death do us part now, but we're going to grow into other people. We're going to discover ourselves. And so many women have this experience where they don't know what they want, who they are, what kind of partner they really want, or they haven't discovered the courage to say it because they need money, because they need a place to live, because they need food on the table, because they want to have children, or at least want to have babies. It's easy. It's a lot easier to decide you want to have babies than it is to decide you want to have children. I discovered that in the process of having babies and children. And these women are stolen from the most precious formative years of their lives where they would have had an opportunity to discover what they really want. And we are the ones who stole them because they were eager to find Prince Charming and go to the castle and go to the dream that breaks all their hearts at some point. The ones that stay with their husbands are the ones who don't. Breaks their hearts at some point when they learn there is no castle. When you get there, they put you in ugly outfits and give you ugly underwear that makes you feel bad about your body. It makes you feel disgusted with sex. It makes you feel disgusted with your identity. It robs you of what you felt femininity was before they sprung on you just a few years after you started wearing bras, that you have to stuff this ugly undershirt underneath the bra. A lot of people don't know that when you hear about magic underwear. How many women, I talked about this recently with Megan Connor in our conversation. Again, Megan Connor, incredible woman. We stopped and listened to her. I said, but I used to go to these meetings called CALM, Community After Leaving Mormonism, here in Utah. They were amazing. People who were still in the Mormon church talking to strangers in a safe environment saying, I don't know how to shop for a bra. Welcome. Thank you very much. How do you say your name? Is it Epu? Thank you very much. And, how many women, Mormon women, I used to say this was 20 years ago. Well, not quite 20 years. It's 2011. What is that, 14? 14 years ago when I moved to Utah and started going to these meetings. I'd been an atheist for a decade. And these people, these women who don't know me from Adam's Odd Ox, my grandma's Mormon expression. Even she said every time, I don't know what that means, Adam's Odd Ox. And would tell us, I don't know how to shop for a bra. And I would say, these women need to get together and shop for bras. What's more, I come to discover, talking to my wife, talking to women, especially in the Mormon church, but women generally, I say, what percentage of ex-Mormon women and Mormon women are wearing the wrong bra? Molly told me, she said, every woman is wearing the wrong bra. Just about every one of them. And hate them. Hate their bras. Want to wear them in many cases because they think, maybe they believe some false fairy tale about, how your body, your boobs will change if you don't wear a bra, whatever. Most of which has been proven not to be true. I think it's been proven not to be true. I didn't look deep into the science. But how many of them want them for support, want them because they look cute, want to be wearing the right bra, and don't know how to say that they don't know how to shop for a bra. And so they buy the one that looks like it might fit and might be comfortable, and they pretty much hate all of them. And I did a little research. I did a few conversations. I found out, and I told Megan about this. I talked to a woman who does parties, like house parties, where women get together, and somebody takes you aside. This woman who knows what she's doing, has figured out, who has gone into training and learned how to do what they don't do at Victoria's Secret. Didn't know until I was married to a woman that this is a thing, that women go to Victoria's Secret and some 19-year-old girl, assistant manager, 20-year-old girl, assistant manager at Victoria's Secret, you book an appointment for a bra consultation, takes you into a room and fits you for a bra. And I said, why? And I asked this woman, I said, why doesn't that work? Because like women do this all the time. And they come away with a card that says, yeah, your strap size is this, your cup size is this. You'll want this kind of bra that's custom fit for you. And I said, why don't you just do that? Why don't they just do that? And she said, because these half the time they don't even have them take their top off, much less their bra. And she says, right there, you don't know how to fit a bra. If you don't know to tell somebody, look, You and I are going to get real friendly here in a minute because it's the only way to get you into the bra that you need. So I'm about to get, so she's about to get to second base with this person. And we're strangers, and this is what she does with these parties. And she's like, just get consent up front and say, look, we're going to go into this room. We're gonna talk about it and treat it like it's a fun thing. And we're going to get to second base real quick. And she says, get them to take. Oh yeah, I lactation consultants are another thing. That's like a whole thing too. They don't tell you that. How many times did you hear before you had a baby? Somebody needs to tell you how to make a baby latch on. I'd never even heard that word before Scarlett was born. I'd never heard that word used like that. I remember looking at the person who was the nurse, the lactation nurse, who was talking to Molly and talking about latching on and thinking, do you have to say it that way? Like, is that a thing? Latch on? That's my wife's nipples you're talking about. You have to use language like that? And she looks at me and she looks at me and she's like, I know what I'm doing. Right. Fair enough. Fair enough. Right? Yeah. And so I was talking to this woman and I said, what's the number one misconception about bras? And she says that people think about the cup size and they don't think about the strap. I said, so they don't get the right size of strap. She says, no, they don't get the right size. They don't get the right shape, the right cut. And they don't figure out how to make the clamshell of it fit right. They don't get the right latches. They don't get the right hooks or what have you. And they don't know the difference between how to wear a plunge bra versus how to wear another one. This is another thing. I was hired as an editor to fix an infomercial that this woman who had invented a bra that she used to outfit celebrities on the red carpet. She had invented this bra you could wear like 19 different ways. And it had the secret is inside the cups, the edges of the cups, there were these little hooks where you could attach the strap. She had invented it, and this is patented. So if you try to steal this, just look up the patent, because I'm pretty sure she had a patent on it. But you could wear it as a plunge bra. You could wear it as an adhesive bra. You could wear it, I think, as what do they call it, a front clasp bra. And I didn't know what any of these terms were, and so I had to cut this infomercial. And it's all about these women and their boobs, and these women talking about their boobs. And that's where I learned to get comfortable talking about bras. You see, I'm talking to the whole world about bras right now. But I got comfortable with it, learning from this woman who invented this bra that and had decided to take it to mass market. And she'd spent thousands of dollars on it, on this infomercial, and hated the way that it had been cut. In the end, the company that I was working with decided to stop working with her right as we were about to finish the infomercial, so it never made it to air. But they hired me to fix it. This is kind of a thing that I've done in the past. Is I'm kind of a fixer. I take video productions that people feel turned out shitty and take it back to the drawing board and fix them. It's something I've been doing for over 20 years now. And this woman started telling me, she's like, how much do you know about comments? Interesting, Epu. Interesting. I'd love to know what videos at the Church of Korihor you've been watching, because that's an interesting trial, one that many of us know. I'd love to talk to you. But she said, how much do you understand about bras? I was like, let's say nothing. And so she explained to me all the different kinds of bras, what kind of dresses you wear them with, and what kind of outfits you'll wear them with, and why it is that you might want straps here or there. And I spent so much of my life talking to women about their bras and how much they hate them. Anyways, then I go to these calm meetings, And it's the first thing that women talk about. Just get real candid here. Can we just get real candid here? Okay. These women would say, my body had just started to form into an adult woman's body when I went to the temple, 20 years old, 19 years old, 18 years old. 18 years old, your body's not finished growing into itself. And then they give you this underwear that you're supposed to wear next to the skin, which means you put it underneath your bra. And now no bra fits right. And then, well, maybe that's how you learned about bras culture. I learned about bras from the Mervyn's catalog and having to confess to my bishop that I was the next Ted Bundy. But these women talk about that, and then you have babies, and your boobs change. Just be candid here, okay? Your body changes, not just your boobs. Your whole body changes. Your torso changes, and nobody knows how. Nobody trains these people who do these bra consultations at Victoria's Secret how to measure the torso correctly so they get the right bra strap. So get the, and so forth. And she's like, it's like a crisis that all women live with and don't feel like they can tell anyone about practically. And then these Mormon women talk about it, and they're like, now I'm 40 something years old. I finally throw these ugly ass sacred underwears out. And now I'm out there trying to find a bra that actually fits, looks cute, but is supportive. And I don't know the first thing about what to look for. Never mind the fact that most women don't. These women feel like they don't know their own bodies. And they've spent most of their life like that. Raising daughters, many of them. How are they going to teach them? Anyways, I've been ranting about Jacob for a while. And we've talked about, I've ranted. You know how I do, guys. But the thing that's amazing to me is to think, I had this thought 12, 13 years ago. I even said in one of these calm meetings, I remember I was in the basement of, Steve's house. This is my friend Steve and his wife. And I said, it's almost like you need a ritual, like an ex-Mormon ritual where women just take each other out, get fitted for bras, and then go and take each other out and go shopping for bras together. Just have a good time with people that you trust and people that you like. And it was like, this is the first time that I came up with an ex-Mormon, a godless ceremony, godless ritual. Every woman in that room went, oh my God, yes. I said, you could get like a bottle of wine or a few bottles of wine, probably. Everybody get together and just get consent up front. It'll have to be enthusiastic consent now that I know more about consent. And get all these women together, and say, we're going to have an intimate group where we're going to talk about each other's boobs and just get in there and just do it. Well, a ritual, Tim, it's a good question, Tim. A ritual is just any ceremonial thing, anything that you do that has significance in your life, ceremonial, spiritual significance. It doesn't have to be an official rite in order to be a ritual. We all have rituals, things that we do that are spiritually significant, emotionally significant to us. But it doesn't have to be formal. It can just be a party. They have these, apparently. Women get together and have bra fitting parties. Happens all the time. And usually what'll happen, from what I understand, is these women who are experts in bras, they'll become like basically distributors for various companies that, and they'll take like orders, and women will sit down. They'll find out what they've been doing wrong about buying bras all these years. And then they'll pick a bra that actually works for them. It actually fits in their budget, right? And they'll place an order for it. And then that person gets paid a percentage. That's the way I understand it anyway. And so, and I think sometimes they pay them an upfront fee. But it's like, this is like a whole ceremony. Similarly, there are a lot of men ex-Mormon men who wish that we could have more intimate contact with other men, but nobody can say it because when we were Mormon and having intimate contact with other men, including when we were boys, going to fathers and sons, going to jamborees, going scouting, right? Going hunting. Boys in the Mormon church connecting intimately with grown men that no one vetted to make sure that they were not criminals or that they were not people who had confessed to our ecclesiastical leaders that they touch people inappropriately. And nobody was checking. Nobody was vetting. And we were having this intimate contact with men, but we couldn't call it that because gay, gay. But shut up, stop it. And then I was so moved a couple of years ago. How many of you remember Trevor Noah on The Daily Show during one of his little recesses, during the commercial break? He has these back and forth, and they would film it. He'd have back and forth with the audience. And he would say, and he said to people something that here in America, I don't think we will ever be able to talk about. Or words to that effect. I'm paraphrasing. And he said, is that men crave intimacy with other men and can't talk about it. Men are starved for intimate contact with men that women tend to be able to have. I don't know that we'll ever come fully honest with the conversation about, is that because women are better at intimacy, or is it because women trauma bond about men? And how afraid they are of us. I had a partner who turned me on to bell hooks, who I talked about a couple weeks ago in my sermon, We Can Heal Masculinity. I talked about this book, The Will to Change by Bell Hooks. And then she talks about, she's a feminist who talks about how I'll tell you a story from this. She talks that really landed so hard for me. She talks about that this woman who worked on her father's ranch, and her father had a heart attack, and she saw it from across the field. And she got on her cell phone. She called 911. She got the ambulance on the way. But the ambulance didn't get there in time. And her father died in her arms. Oof. Died in her arms there in this field. And as he lay there in her arms, dying, she realized in that moment that she couldn't shake the feeling that this was the first time in her life that she felt she was allowed to touch her father's body. And they missed out on a whole life of non-sexual physical intimacy because she felt like so afraid because it's not appropriate to touch her father. Broke my heart as a father. I'm sure I would, Mary. I'm sure I would be surprised, even though I'm surprised. I'm continually surprised about what women share with each other about their relationship with men and about their fear of men. Well, in this book, Bell Hooks talks about. Hello.
You left your phone in the car.
Oh, thanks. Is someone trying to contact me? Did I have messages?
I don't know.
Okay. Thanks. I don't have my key. I take it Mom got in. She did. I left my phone in my car. So and she's talking about that women, quite candidly, and the men that they grow up with, that they are waiting for them to die. And that hit me so hard because I've always wondered if the women in my life wish that they could have a life without me. And the only thing the only hope they could have is that I will leave, but realizing that I don't just leave my people. I don't just leave. That then their only hope is that I will die. Secret truth about so many women and girls is that they're waiting for men to die. So they can just feel safe, feel free, become themselves. Because so many men, we men, don't know how to acknowledge privilege. And if we can't acknowledge privilege, we can't change. That's why I've just been so frustrated lately. Because I started talking about this before I started ranting more about my friend Richard Carrier. Man, I have great respect for, who has had toxic behaviors. It's been called out since he's been on my show. Richard has done toxic things. I've done toxic things. We are men from a culture of privileged men who just do toxic shit and get away with it. Because we get away with it, we don't think it actually exists. Or because we didn't do it on purpose. We think we don't have anything to apologize for. But then sit here and bitch to ourselves or to others that sometimes I feel like the women around me are just waiting for me to die. Well, I wonder why. If we can't change, if we can't grow, if we can't even acknowledge our toxicity, who could blame them if they're waiting for us to die? And then there's this video that Jacob puts out. He calls out Alyssa Grenfell, calls out Jenny Gage, he calls out Maven. And then posts this video of this girl who talks about how heartbroken she was when her Prince Charming didn't take her to her castle. Hello, this is the before of A Mormon Story. I won't be the least bit surprised when this girl tells the rest of her story to Jonathan. And so that's why I said to Kai, after that episode with Kai Van Leuven of Jesus for Mormons, we abruptly ended that conversation when he found out I don't hate John DeLynn. And or he didn't say he hated John DeLynn. I don't think he does hate John DeLynn. And he is a Christian. I think he should. I don't think Kai Van Leuven's trying to hate anybody. He definitely had strong distaste, strong feelings about Mormon stories. And I let him express it. And I respect that journey that Kai is on. He's a nice guy. I've really become very friendly with him. I really like Kai. And I introduced him to, apparently, according to our friend Corey, found out for us, Rob Tobler. I don't know if how many of you know this. Rob Tobler, who's a TikToker, an ex-Mormon TikToker, we come to find out, I'm talking to him, and he's like, oh, we have to go on at this time because I'm in Hawaii. And I said, oh, I have clients in Hawaii, so I'm often up late to work. And I said, what part of Hawaii? And he told me, and I went, Rob Tobler lives out there. And he's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, how big is that town? He's not that big. Come to find out, Rob Tobler and Kai Van Leuven, they live down the street from each other. I said, you guys got to get together. Even if it's just to yell at each other. This ex-Mormon Christian and this ex-Mormon, I don't know what to say about my cousin, my third cousin, once removed, Rob Tobler. I don't even if they just scream at each other, I don't think he is an atheist by the things he says, which is cool. I'm into it, Rob. You do you, baby. You go on this journey. You'll come around. And I said, you guys got to talk. So it's interesting. But after we were done, I don't think Kai will mind my mentioning this. He asked me Now, in the privacy of the not broadcast part of our conversation, you really think Mormon Stories isn't doing harm to people? And I said, I think it's doing harm probably to the church, but only because it won't grow, because they won't recognize their privilege and they won't recognize their abuse. And he's like, yeah, the Mormon church is abusive, but do you think they're doing the best thing for their people, for the people who are listening? And I said, I really do. And I said, look, I agree with you. I can't listen to it all the time. I'll get too passionate about it. I'll get too much in the weeds and I'll get dragged down and I'll get depressed. And I can't afford that right now. I've got too much to do. So I've supported Mormon Stories, the Open Stories Foundation. I have given them, not a lot, but $10 a month for over a decade because I believe in the work that they're doing. I really do. And I said, people who are leaving Mormonism are newly leaving Mormonism all the time. And the Church of Korihor is not the first place they're going to go. They're not going to find our stuff first. They're going to, well, I mean, apparently some will, and they're welcome. But most of those people, when they're in the deconstruction, they're going to find Mormon Stories. And there they're going to find fresh stories from fresh faces of people who have recently left. And having been to these calm meetings, I can tell you it's so important to hear the fresh stories of people who are freshly deconstructing from religion, especially from one as toxic as Mormonism. And it's important for these people to learn from each other and to have experiences together. Because if they, and to compare their stories, and in a way where other people will find them and realize they are not alone. So do I think that Mormon Stories is good or bad? I think it's good. I think what John Dehlin is doing. I said, and I'll tell you another thing. You might not want to hear this guy. I said, I have mad respect for John Dehlin for keeping that going. Because John has to sit there and listen to these stories again and again and again and again. I don't know how he does it, frankly. I listen to people on my program all the time, but I get to talk about whatever I'm thinking about, whatever I want. John gets to hear people's trauma over and over and over again. It's like he's doing therapy for free. Well, not for free, because he gets paid and gets paid well. I'm glad he does. I'm glad John makes good money. He deserves it. He's doing an important work. Now, is John perfect? No. Who would expect him? No, who would expect him to be? But you know what? I tell people, when people point out John's past and talk about controversies in the history of Open Stories and Mormon Stories, let's acknowledge it happened. It's happened. And I talked about this briefly on one of Kulch's shows, one of his after shows. And I had said a thing about, I just got so frustrated with John, briefly with this thing that happened. But no, there's no need to bring it up again here. Everybody knows how to find it. And then I recanted. I said, can I just recant? This was on the episode with Steve Pinecker. I said, can I just recant for a minute? I didn't mean to call John out there. I feel like when people tell me, what do you think about, John's relationship with Margie? What do you think about the controversy of what has happened with John and his employees? What happened with John, the blow up with Kate Kelly? I think people have forgotten about that. We don't need to get into it. I was friendly. I wasn't close to John. I wasn't close to Kate, but I knew both of them. And when that happened, I felt so heartbroken. It was like watching a family fight. I was like, gosh, I really wish this wasn't happening. But it was happening. And I tell them, and I'll tell you what I told Kulch and Steve. I don't know if Kulch is still with us, but right now in the chat. But he'll verify this because this was in the after show. And I said, but I'll tell you this. Every year, every time there's a controversy, John does a transparency episode where he films himself listening while somebody challenges him directly. or he talks bluntly about how he is listening, and he shuts up and he listens even when they're talking shit about him. Whether or not he's good at it is beside the point. Have you ever seen, when are you going to ever see the apostles of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints do that? Don't tell me the Mormon Stories or Open Stories Foundation is as corrupt as the Mormon Church. Fucking miss me with that shit. Bullshit. It's not true. I got mad respect for John DeLynn. I understand he's done toxic things. He's a man. I am too. I've done toxic shit. But I see a man who's trying to become better. I see a man who's willing to admit he's made mistakes. I see a man who's trying to be a better person. And any man who's willing to do that gets my respect. I'll tell you, I'm pretty good friends with our friend Culture, formerly Cultural Hall, who has admitted on his show recently that he was pretty toxic when he was Mormon and even, non-practicing Mormon, and that he has only within the last couple of years learned to recognize some of the toxic shit that he did. I hope he doesn't mind. He has said it out loud. He has said it, I think, on his public-facing videos. And Culture is my friend. And I listened. He confessed something very, very hard for men in our society to admit to. I'm one of them. Culture is one of them. John is one of them. You're never going to hear these cult leaders. I'm just going to call it out. I don't like saying things like high demand religion. Fuck that noise. It's a cult. You're never going to hear them admit to that they were toxic, that they need to grow as a person. Not like that. You're never going to hear them say that. So now I've ranted about pretty much everybody I know. Not quite. I got more. Cool. Molly's home, spending time with the kids. It's good. Anyways. Yeah. Mary says this. This is good. That people have said that it's like a free therapy session where they can get everything out, to say that it's a great weight off their shoulders. Not just people who tell their stories. This is a good point, Mary. Not just people who tell their stories on Mormon Stories, but the people who listen to them. I've done it. Did you guys see the episode where he interviews Lori Hall, the trans woman who used to design temples, an architect who used to design temples for the Mormon Church, talking about her relationship with the Quorum of the 12, talking about how, something that a story that I've seen again and again as I've talked to trans people, particularly trans women, is that for years before they came out, they collected clothes for themselves and got called out. Whose is this? When the wife finds out, whose is this? They had to, and then have to come out to their wife when they get discovered because they were collecting clothes for them. The wife thinks, who is she? Where's this bitch? Give me her name. Her name is my name. It's this name. And it goes with these pronouns. I don't buy it. Bullshit. I would know. If I was married to a trans woman. Well, guess what? This is how you find out. Oftentimes, that's how they find out. I listened to Lori Hall's story with amazing interest. I mean, I was just like transfixed by the story. Ever since I started talking to trans women like Evan Charlie and like Jules Del Sol about the journey of transition for women, for trans women in the world, I've been just fixated on how important it is to have these conversations. John's having them all the time with people who carry serious trauma, religious trauma. It's just been a remarkable journey for me. Wow. Did you guys see this comment? Dan, I hope you don't mind my pulling you up. It's Dan Vogel. That just happened. Exactly, Dan. I love the ex-Mormon community, and let me tell you something. The ex-Mormon community is toxic AF. You know why? Because it's got a bunch of freaking Mormons in it. And we spent our whole life, especially Mormon men, we spent our whole life being on the one side spiritually neglected in our emotional development, neglected in our neurological development, neglected in our emotional intelligence, in how to grow as emotional intelligence with not only with a mixed bag of male role models, and not realizing our own privilege and how we as hurt men were hurting everyone from a position of privilege. You're not going to hear that at church. You're not going to hear that at priesthood meeting. Imagine this for a second. How many men are at priesthood meeting every conference and need to hear? In our toxicity, we hurt everyone, not just boys, raising them to become like us and to see us and the way we handle things. But all of the women in our lives are touched in some way by our toxicity, in ways that make them afraid, in ways that make them want. It's that story. Men, I wish I could remember off the top of my head who had said this. Somebody in the chat maybe will remind me that men's greatest fear is that women will embarrass them. Women's greatest fear is that men will kill them. They just live that. They just live in that fear. And how do you bridge that divide? Do you think that the priesthood meetings are bridging that divide? I hope they do. I haven't been to one in years, but I can tell you the ones I remember. The ones I remember were about stewardship, righteous stewardship, and no explanation that I felt was constructive of what that meant. Being able to listen, being able to know, being able to understand consent, not just for sex, for touching, for speaking to someone, the way that we talk to somebody, the way we talk about people behind their backs. I as I said, this last year, or this last couple of weeks, I had to learn that lesson myself. I had to apologize to people, and I'll tell you why. It's been a hard road for me to learn how to apologize without making excuses. I got them. I got an excuse. Who wants it? Not you. I hope not you. Not the people I'm apologizing to. Keep it to myself. Challenge myself and say, how much of this is just an excuse? Most of it? Then fuck it. Chuck it. Don't need that. Wow. I'm proud of you, Dan. I didn't know that about your story. I can't tell you how many times as a polyamorous man, I've had multiple women that I've dated and that just are in my circle, have told me, the sexiest thing I know in a man, the thing I find most attractive in a man is that he goes to therapy. And sometimes I'm tempted to feel attacked because everybody who dates me knows I don't do therapy. I've tried it and I want to try it again and do well at it, but it's just too discouraging for me when I discover that the process of finding a therapist for me in the past has been so hard to do and requires so much attention that I just give up on it early. It's my toxic shit. But I wanted for years to be able to find a therapist that works out and that helps. So I got to dedicate the time and energy to learn how to find a therapist correctly. And I'm sure the resources are out there, and I'm just too lazy to do it, or I've been too lazy to do it. But men don't only need therapy; they need opportunities to bond, not just with women, but with each other. And we need to be able to have intimacy and understand as men that intimacy doesn't mean sex. And that's something you're not going to get in our culture growing up as a boy. I did try group therapy. It wasn't for me. Let me qualify that. I tried group therapy, online group therapy for anger management, and I've tried it for ideation. And let me tell you, I learned something very valuable about ideation. Don't get a bunch of suicidal people together to talk about it. Do it individually. That's just my advice. Maybe somebody out there knows how to do it correctly. Do it well. I've not seen it. And I've talked to a lot of people who say that was bad for me. You got to be able to work that stuff out one on one sometimes. But group therapy is so useful for so many things. But I tell you, those calm meetings, and Mary, this is a good point that you're bringing up. Those calm meetings, those community after leaving Mormonism meetings, that was like group therapy. That was very much like group therapy. I don't know if they even still have them. I had to stop going because I started to show up to everyone, and I was like, I'm sure people don't want to, because like every time you would go, they were mostly new people, new faces. People just got it out of their system. This is why I say this is like a rite of passage going to one of these group therapy, basically meetings about for people who are mostly still in the church and need to just get off their chest how wrong it was, how wrong this experience was. Yeah. Yeah, Epu, thanks for mentioning this. Um, wow, this is high praise. This is from somebody who's just started engaging with us. Thank you. I had a conversation a few weeks ago. I hope you guys don't mind. I'm stretching into 2 hours on this Linger Longer, but I'm really enjoying this. I haven't had anybody pop up in the StreamYard yet, but that's cool. But you guys don't mind listening to me rant. But I had this conversation with Brett Hartley of No Nonsense Spirituality. Right at the beginning, I was very fortunate. Brett Hartley gave me her time. I greatly admire and respect that that women will give of their time for free, in spite of the fact that one of the most toxic things about us as men in our society, and about Mormon men in particular, is we ask women for their time for free all the time. And as I mentioned earlier in sermon today, I hate asking women for their time for free because I feel like I feel so guilty. But the fact of the matter is, Church of Korihor doesn't have any money. In spite of people telling me all the time, I started a cult to make money, and I'm like, shit, I'm failing at it already. But I hate asking women for their time for free. But I'm not in a position to turn it away. When my sister volunteered to organize the documents of the Church of Korihor and to start our accounting so that we can be prepared to file our taxes and do it all for free. When she has kids, she has 3 diabetic people in her household that she has to monitor their blood sugar 24 hours a day, including her daughter. She has a trans daughter who's going through a lot since November. I didn't know how hard it had been on her, and I just found that out this week. I could be there for her. And then my nephew, who is, I think he's officially pansexual. I'm not sure. Um, and I just found out is a victim of domestic violence. I didn't know that. And then my sister, who's trying to keep these people alive through a very hard time right now, volunteered to keep the books for the Church of Korihor and help us to keep the books balanced. And she said and I told her, I said, and I told you guys a little earlier, my sister's really big in the drag queen community, which it still is wild and beautiful to me to even say those words out loud. But especially down St. George, I don't know if you know about this, but down St. George, Utah, they've been they've been fighting with the local government to allow drag shows down there that are age appropriate, and fighting against this trend that's going with all of the people, this very Mormon culture. I mean, much higher density of Mormons in St. George than here in Utah County. And these Mormons fighting against them, saying, nope, you're all grooming children. And they're like, it's not. If you looked at it, it's not like that at all. And my sister's in the middle of that. She knows every single person in there. And she was one of the people organizing to to protest and to get drag queens to be able to perform. This is a woman who does not have a lot of money. This is a woman who does not have a lot of time, and her physical my headphones are dying. What's been happening is I've not been charging them. This woman who doesn't have a lot of time to gives of her time to support people, not just in the drag queen community and drag kings, but also to support trans people in southern Utah, where this very toxic culture is hurting these people. And she went out to these people these last 2 weeks. Some of them are famous drag queens, and said, if anybody out there has blankets, my brother has a new church for atheists up in Salt Lake that's going out and putting blankets around people who are cold. And people who I haven't consented to give their names, but who are known names in the drag queen and drag king community, in the drag community, went out and got blankets and brought them to my sister, and they're in my car. I'm going to take them up to Salt Lake later, probably tonight. I was going to do it on Monday, but tonight is a code blue, so I'm going to do it. I'm going to try and get up there tonight. I was going to try and volunteer at St. Mark's Episcopal. I think they're full up. I'm going to check here as soon as we're done. I mean, women give me of their time, give us of their time and their brilliance. The least we could be doing is listening. It's the least we could be doing, active listening. And they'll tell us some things. Well, a lot of our growth as men is going to have to come from within. We're going to have to be able to say, do I call myself out? Do I confront myself enough? And when I recognize my behaviors that are toxic, do I change? What do I do to change? Do I have a practice to change? Am I investing my time in learning how to change? These are things I am actively going through right now. Too late in life, but never too late to start. I really do think that we could be doing better as a community, as individuals, especially as men. I've officially gone on to sermonize 2.5 hours, well past sermon. I really do hope that people will engage with what we're doing at the Church of Korihor, and that you will go and just take a look around at korihor.org. You know, I struggled for a while about asking people to give donations to the church to become a part of the organization. We talked about it for a while, and I did say from the beginning that if I was to ask people for quote unquote tithing, I would ask them for $2 a month, just to help defray the costs of the website and the accounting software and things like that. But that if you're going to give tithing, don't give it to the church. Don't give it to the central governing body of the church, which is mostly just me and Jenny at this point. But that you should give it to the missions and support locally. I really do see the future of this movement being a think global, act local movement. And the leaders, as I said from the beginning, from our first godless sermon, We're Going Home, I said, people ask me, are you the leader that you think is missing from the world? Because I've been saying this from the beginning. I said this to Steve Pinecker, who agreed with me before we formed the Church of Korihor, when I was just talking about it. And I said, we are suffering from a vacuum of moral leadership in this country and in the world, in Western society throughout, especially. And people, when people hear that and talk to me about it, they often ask me, do you see yourself as that leader? It's only since we started the Church of Korihor that I started to say yes, but not the leader, a leader. The thing I am most excited about at the Church of Korihor is our luminaries. We don't have a lot. We got Jules. We still have to officially ordain. I'm working on that. That's one of the things we're working on now. Well, I said before, I will fail, and I will start again. And we'll just fail and fail until we find all the ways to fail, or by some stroke of luck, we go home. We make the world a little bit better. We got Jules, and we've got Nikki. We have other people who are interested in becoming luminaries, and we're still trying to shape up what that will look like. I am excited to think that there will be people who will get inspired by what we're doing here and will teach me what this looks like. I do think that one of the things, I just wanted to mention this, then maybe we'll wrap up here. Mary had mentioned this, I believe, was it Mary who had mentioned before about this comment. I think John DeLynn was wrong about saying it's hard to try and form community for Exmos because there's no reason to actively take part because it isn't forced. You prove him wrong. This is high praise. I honor that. Thank you very much. Epu, excuse me. Hopefully I'm saying your name right. When Britt Hartley and I had our conversation early on in Church for Atheists, she intimately expressed to me some of the frustrations. She knows John very well. Some of the frustration John has had with the community development at Thrive, which I believe he's not involved with anymore, or at least, well, I think he's involved with it, but he's not like in the leadership anymore or something like that. I'm really not sure of the internal politics of Thrive. And she talked about how it was difficult to get people to commit to a movement that didn't have that church-like structure of hierarchy and clergy, but and how it didn't, because that made it a platform for lots of ideas, and that people didn't connect to and didn't feel like it was moving in a direction. And that one of the biggest challenges for a godless spiritual community is, how do you create direction without prophets, without scripture? And I said, I do feel like it has to do with the structure of the communities and how we can learn from the mistakes of Mormonism, particularly, and how their hierarchy works. That everybody in the hierarchy is just it's a big mountain of leaders, all men, going down the chain from central government in Salt Lake out to regional, out to stakes, out to wards, and then out into various ministries. And I think that probably made sense in the 19th century, and it doesn't make sense anymore. And so I've often referred to our philosophy, perhaps I should use a different word, but it's the one that makes sense to me right now, as the ship of fools philosophy, which is to say, I'm looking for people who catch the vision of what we are doing. The heralds will direct from here what the direction that the church is going in, and what we officially canonize and what we don't, because there has to be what we officially release and what we don't, and what direction it goes in, and who is made a leader and who isn't made a leader in the community. But then after that, the money that's raised needs to stay local for the most part, really for the whole part. That that when these leaders emerge, who have been vetted, fingerprinted, and background checked, very important to me. And then we interview them and talk to them about what their vision is. That we make sure that we are on point and that they're in contact with us and that we advise them. I say, I don't want to lead those people per se, so much as I want to serve those people. I had this conversation with Jenny Gage when we newly decided that she would become second herald after I invited her to do that. And she generously agreed. And I said, here's the thing, Jenny. We, more than anything else, are going to serve the luminaries. The luminaries are going to be the ones out there doing the sacraments. They're going to be the ones that people come to when they're in crisis and they need help. They're going to be the ones building community. They're going to be the ones who feel called to this work. They're going to be the ones who go out and feed people, put blankets around people. If I can dream with you guys for a minute, something that really lights my heart on fire here. I foresee a day when a luminary somewhere in our movement will be a mortgage lender. Not ever a bishop, not ever a pastor, a mortgage lender, a banker, somebody out there who's pricked in their heart to say, we've got to do something about this housing crisis. And will say, I know the people we need to start a housing co-op that will help to balance out how expensive rent is in this community. And they will get no direction from me because I don't know what I'm doing because they do. And we will find the right organizers, we'll find the right attorneys, and we will go out there and we'll get businesses, we'll get grant writers who will come into this movement, people who know what they're doing. And that person's passion will start a community where people who were working full-time jobs to try and be able to afford groceries and cars and insurance and medication and rent as well will now finally be able to do it. And we will have transformed painful lives into lives worth living. There needs to be some central leadership to find those people. And I am very humbled by the work of it so far. It is hard. It is hard to find those people and to inspire those people and to get this word out to enough people that they will catch the spirit of this movement, because they get caught up on Church for Atheists or who is Korihor. Let's get past that as quickly as possible, because this is a movement that's teaching, that's keeping God churches, God worshipers in check, and showing them that that atheism is not a religion, agnosticism is not a religion. If it were, we'd do it better, because we'd use science, because we're not afraid of history, because we're not afraid to admit that when we're toxic. Even men. Women have toxicity too, but we're not calling them out today. and I am so privileged to have people who I can listen to and learn from. I hope some of you out there will get a chance to listen to my interview with Dr. Anton Troyer from Bemidji State University, the Ojibwe man who called out on our show about how not just Chief Mitiga. I mean, we did talk about Chief Mitiga, David Taylor, and and who is welcome on my show. If I have called you out unfairly, David, you're welcome to come tell me off to my face. And in fact, if you want to meet in person, I'll do it, knowing full well. Well, no, I won't. I won't expose that because I don't know that. I don't know that. I'm just not even going to say that. But I met with Dr. Troyer, and he told me, and I asked him point blank, "Are you aware of a red metal record from the Ojibwe people that's supposed to be released this year?" And he said no. I said, "Are you aware of?" And I asked him about the story of the family of Lehi and Mulek, the Jaredites, and he said no. And I said, and I went through this, but then this man, I took some time to learn from him and say, what could we be doing better in the Church of Korihor to provide spiritual community to atheists? And I asked him, I said, surely there are atheists in Native communities, both on the reservation and not on the reservation. And if they are anything like the atheists throughout Western society, they probably are being spiritually neglected. What can we do in a way that honors and respects their ceremonies and honors and respects their ancestors and their history? And he said to me, he said, here's the difference between religion and native ceremonies. Boy, I hope some of you who have heard this conversation heard what I heard. He said, if a lodge does a ceremony and they use certain colors and say these colors represent this and this, or they arrange poles or branches in a certain way or in a certain direction. He says today it's facing towards this. This lodge sets the door facing towards the east, or the fire setting towards the east, because that's where the sun rises. And the lodge over here faces it towards the south, because that's how the sun, that's where the sun is visible through the sky, from where you are, or whatever it is. And he said, nobody calls them out. There's no structure to call them out and say, you're not doing it right. That's not how it's done. He said, because every one of them is doing what they need to do. How many times in the Church of Korihor have we talked about how startling it was to try and create a ceremony for trans people to come to be celebrated in their transition, to create and eventually abandon a coming out ceremony, because pretty much every gay person we talked to about it just about said that it was a bad idea. And so rather than continuing to try and develop it, that, we abandoned it. How many times right from the beginning, my first divorce ritual conversation with Jenny Gage. And she said, it really is, it has that her toxic husband and throwing away her marriage to her toxic husband was one thing. But then she saw the way that couples who still loved each other and still appreciated each other, but were ready to move on separately from where they were, could have a beautiful ceremony where both of them thanked each other for the memories they created, for the children that they made, for the life they had made together, and for the love that they had committed to share when they were children and got married and grew into adults who now had the resources and the courage to say this isn't where I want to be when I die. I want to pursue where this mission inside of me, this person inside of me, has been trying to get to, but didn't have the money, time, resources, or courage to say it, or maybe didn't know that it was there, or maybe it changed. I talked earlier about this. This is something you can't get. I feel conservatives cannot get. I'm speaking of social conservatives. I don't speak to political ideology. that social conservatives just don't get when they talk about trans people and they talk about gender. Every single one of them uses this language. Trans people think they were born in the wrong body, they say. Tell me in one sentence you don't get what trans people are going through at all. That's the one. Trans people think they were born in the wrong body. No, that's not it at all. They say woke people, woke scolds, think that there are 30 genders or an unlimited number of genders. No, you don't get it. Tell me you're not listening without telling me. The truth of gender fluidity is that gender expression and gender identity are separate, but they're growing at the same time. And not only is gender fluid between people, it's fluid between the people you become in your life. That your person can be born, identified, assigned male at birth, and feel perfectly happy as a male, as a man, or as a boy, and has no regrets about it. That can totally happen. And identify as a woman later in life because they have developed into that gender role, and that expression is happening within them as they progress through their life, and that's their journey. And if we don't listen to trans people, is it any wonder we don't understand them? And if we don't understand them, we're not providing them with spiritual growth and spiritual community. And I'm trying to develop that. And I had this conversation with Anton Troyer. I could have spent the whole hour I had with him talking about how Chief Mitiga is appropriating Ojibwe culture for Mormons and doing it in a toxic way. And I do believe that's true. We could have talked about that for an hour. But do you see what I mean when I say what a wasted hour? What a wasted opportunity. Because I had an opportunity to learn from this man who, when I asked him about Ojibwe rituals and about how do we, without appropriating Ojibwe culture, learn from what native tribes and native nations have known for thousands of years about how to do rites of passage and how to do ceremony appropriately, to learn something, to learn, what's the word I'm looking for? Resilience. And what I learned from him is that this thing we have talked about, that all of these ceremonies, the uncoupling ceremony, the overview, the chosen family banquet, and now we're developing more. And then, of course, chrysalis, which is what we have come to call our celebration of trans people and their transition. That what we're talking about, making each of them individualized to the person themselves, in a similar way to how weddings, of course we do weddings too, or we will eventually, how a wedding or a funeral has to be individualized to the person themselves. So this has to be individualized. The least individualized or sacrament of the Church of Korihor is the sacrament by which you join the church, which is the oath of reason. It's an established formal thing that we do so that you know and so that you acknowledge that you have taken on a life where you don't pursue gods, you pursue transforming painful lives into lives worth living as an individual who is not waiting for gods and governments to do it for us. We're taking it on ourselves and as a community. And then other than that, what we're talking about doing, indigenous peoples on this continent have been doing from the beginning. Turns out, everything that we dislike about the Mormon church or about other churches is not so much a kickback against church as it is a kickback against Western civilization and how this centralized role of a governed church where people all obey one person or one small group of people without question and define their doctrine, define their ceremonies by what that one person or group of people approve of, is part of what makes religion fail. So we kick back against it and say there should be no such centralized thing at all. And then we get things where, platforms for post-religious people that I think are noble. I don't think anybody did anything wrong at Thrive. I don't think anybody did anything wrong at the Ex-Mormon Foundation, which I don't even know if that even exists anymore. I know they stopped doing conferences. I was real disappointed. I don't think anybody's doing anything wrong at the Satanic Temple. I don't think they're doing anything wrong at the Humanist Association. I've been looking into the history of these. I've been talking to people from these organizations, and when I do, I learned that there's been a frustration, and I feel like we are learning as we go that ritual is useful if it's individualized and if people connect to it in the same way that Brett Hartley's clients in her spiritual director business are doing it, and that they need individual care and that they need to give themselves room to play. And when we can make those real values, like the 12 values of cohortism, we can actually improve what we're doing. So yes, people, I've said before, and now I'm going to say this, I'm going to wrap up because we're going for 3 hours now, that people treat the Church of Korihor like it's a joke. But this is no joke. We're doing the work. We're doing the work the way people who claim to believe in God and worship God haven't managed to do. And we will fail, but in small measures. And we will do better. We learned it with our first mission of reason so far, which is still going on. Rapture 2025 is still happening. We have now collected and distributed, or will have when I get up to Salt Lake with this batch of blankets that even my Mormon parents gave blankets. We will have collected and distributed directly to people out on the street, living out on the street so far. I'm trying right now to get to car camps and start giving out blankets at car camps. We have collected and distributed 100 blankets, more than 100 blankets now. And, just here in Salt Lake. Down in Albuquerque, New Mexico, Jules Del Sol's been doing it out there. And now when people who have been critics of ours have been talking about us, even people I've been particularly sharp-elbowed about, like Jonah Barnes, have said, yo, guys, go easy on this guy when talking about us to other people. I'm listening. They say, whoa, guys, go easy on the trolling. These people, they're actually going out and taking care of the needy, is the word he used in comments on YouTube videos. Right. I say unsheltered, but that's okay. They are needy. I don't love that word. They recognize that we're actually doing something. And our being people of conscience is going to prick the conscience of other people. Out there right now, you guys, there's somebody who's a therapist. There's somebody who's a yoga teacher. There's somebody who is a life coach. There's somebody who works building houses. There's somebody who was a leader in another church. I reached out earlier this week, or reached out yesterday to an organization, to to a ministry, really, an atheist ministry called the Clergy Project. I don't know how many of you know about this. It was started by the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and it's a group that started out just as like a almost like a group therapy and an experiment in recording the experiences of people who are clergy, who trained to become clergy in various traditions. And when they were young, they went to seminary, they learned how to preach, they learned to be ecclesiastical leaders. And then in the process of preaching sermons, they lost their faith in God. Just like I did as a missionary over 20 years ago. And how lost they felt, how trapped they felt in a career and in a lifestyle where they couldn't tell anyone, where they had to be atheists in secret because it would cost them their livelihood. In the Clergy Project, I reached out to them to say, I don't know what I'm doing here, but I know about you and I know about your work, and you don't know who I am. I'm Joe Rollins. I'm the first herald of the Church of Korihor. It's a church for atheists. I would love to be on your programs or speak to your people and tell you and share with you what I have learned. Or if you have people who are interested, I would love for you to come on Church for Atheists and teach me some things and help my community to develop what to learn from your experience. Let's get some preachers in here. Let's get some people who know how to give a sermon to come in here and tell me how to do mine better. Let's get some of these atheists and agnostics who have experience in building spiritual community and bring them in here and get them to see that they are not speaking into a void, that they're being heard, and that what they have to say matters, and that we need to know how to build spiritual community, and we are not afraid to learn from people who learned how to do it for God. Most of the people who are involved in this, at some point and in some measure, learned how to do this for God. And now that we are godless people, we're willing and ready to admit, some of us, that we're in spiritual neglect, and that we're in a vacuum of moral and ecclesiastical leadership in this society, let's say, and that it's time for leaders to emerge. When people ask me, "Are you the leader?" I say yes. I say yes, because I'm standing up in this void. But I tell you this right now, my friends, and especially you people in the future, I hope you're listening. I stand up in this void, and do you know what I see? I see other people standing up. And I see people who want to. I see people who want to serve. I see people who, if they could spend their lives serving others, they would do it. Thank you, Lisa. That's very thoughtful of you. Thank you very much. That there are people who would do it, but they have to pay bills. And so many of us come from traditions where priestcraft was getting paid to preach. But then the rest of the religious world has no problem being paid to preach. And the leaders in Salt Lake of the Mormon Church have no problem becoming millionaires, where they preach 2 sermons a year. No problem. No problem, probably, with ghost-written books, frankly. Be shocked to find any of these men knew how to write a book. I've done it. It's not easy. And they get rich off of it. Do you think? And then shaming all the while, professing about priestcraft. But you have these people out here that if they're spending their time building spiritual community, they feel guilty asking people to pay them. It's a service. We live in if we lived in a society, if we lived in Star Trek socialism, we could have food replicators in every quarters, and it would, and and people would get assigned quarters. You wouldn't have to worry about that. But we don't. We live in a society where if you're going to eat, you have to work and you have to pay money. It's a stupid system, but it's the one we got for now. Mary, I'd love to know if you know that for sure. I've not heard that. I've just always assumed it. They have to. They have to have ghostwriters. You think these men know these scriptures as well as they do? Bullshit. No way. They got to be leaning on those assistants to the quorum of the 12. Heavy, heavy. I don't know. Maybe they hire people. I don't know. I don't really care. I mean, I do care a little bit, obviously, but I mean, I stand up in this space and I see people out there, and a lot of them are going to be people, maybe people who hear this in the future. I see you. I know you want to do it. I know you're afraid. I know you're worried about not having enough time. I know you're worried about not having enough money to do it. I don't have all the answers yet, but we're learning them. If you come in and be a part of this, you'll teach me some things and we'll learn together. We'll figure it out. I don't know. I can't think of anything I have ever done apart from raising these three beautiful children of mine that has had as big an impact as the Church of Korihor has had just in the first 60 days. Our first 60 days, we've transformed so many people's lives. We've touched so many people who didn't even know the name of this organization or that we exist, and still don't. And we put blankets around people. I had a guest. I'm not resentful. I had a guest on Wednesday service this week on Linger Longer who called me out for taking blankets up to Salt Lake. Said those people don't need blankets. It was a very abrasive call out, considering most people don't really have a problem with our doing this. This particular individual I've already talked about. I'm not going to give it more airtime than it needs. I don't resent that, because he went on to say what they need is a policy change. And okay, yes. I wish you'd not buried the lead, friend. That's true. I said, what's more, they need buildings. We need climate control buildings. If I had money, like a certain organization that has some $250, $300 billion or more, including over $16 billion in real estate, is the fifth largest real estate owner in the country, I could put people into buildings. I don't know how many of you caught this. I talked about on Wednesday service. We are solidly going for the 3-hour mark here. That this last year in Colorado, a federal court judge sided with a church in Castle Rock, where I'm from, where I was born, and said that this church could not be prevented by zoning laws from housing unsheltered people, because according to federal law, if the church has a mandate to house people who are unsheltered, then they can use the land that they have for these churches. Again, do you guys remember my saying in sermon today that 100,000 churches are believed will close in the next decade or two? 100,000 in this country, churches. What did I say in We're Going Home? This is our time. Atheists and agnostics, it's time for us to get religion, but not a religion about God, a religion about us. This is our time. When they're the largest, fastest growing movement of spiritual movement in this country and in Western civilization, maybe the world, is nuns with an O, not a U. This is our time. Someone has to step up into this void. I'm stepping up. I will stand up in this void without a dollar I can spare, without an hour that I can spare. I will give. I'll do what it takes. And I'm not looking behind me to see if anybody's coming with me. But who's coming with me? I'll do it by myself. I've said before, I would do it by myself. But Jenny Gage stood up. Jules Del Sol stood up. Nikki Smithson. My flesh and blood sister. My chosen family, and the chosen family of so many people in the drag community. I love it. Stood up. A world where people are trying to make America great again, and good for them. I hope they do it. By talking, voting, and yelling, and shaming. We're doing the work. I know I John Boehner situations. I'm sorry. I shouldn't shame John Boehner. I took a picture and posted it to Facebook on a moment when I was particularly down. As I went out and I was doing the work with my son Elijah. We went up to Salt Lake and put blankets around people. And I asked him, I said, when did my hand get so dirty? And my hand, it was just black with soot. I said, what did I touch? Was it the escalator? Was it one of the door handles, the place where we stopped for tacos at lunch? When did I do this? I dropped Elijah off that day. He was having an anxiety attack, couldn't go to school. And I said, let's go up to Salt Lake and let's give out these blankets. I got to do it. You're going to come with me and you're going to film me doing it so that we can show the people of the Church of Korihor that the work is happening. And that's what we did. And I came home and I dropped him off after we'd handed out all of our blankets and spent the better part of the morning handing out blankets in Salt Lake. And I sat in my car for a minute and I looked down at my hand that was black with soot as I remembered the moment when my hand got dirty. If you watch the update to Rapture 2025, you'll see a man holding a blanket around him already down by Temple Square. His name is David. I approached him and said, hey, my friend, could you use an extra blanket? And he said, do you have one? I pulled out Laura's blankets. Laura's an ex-Mormon woman from the Mormon Stories community on page on Facebook who connected when Jenny posted in there saying, if any of you in Utah have blankets, she connected to it. Didn't know us, didn't know anything about us, contacted me on Facebook and said, I'll gather blankets. And she's been gathering blankets. Most of our blankets so far have been from Laura. And I took one garbage bag of blankets and I started digging through it. And when he saw how many garbage bags I had, he said, stop. I have a blanket. Let me take you where there are people who don't. And he went and he took me and Elijah, out to the park over by the public library, which has since been raided by the police and people forcibly removed. And we handed out all of our blankets in all of about 3 minutes from this bag of blankets. And at the end, I asked Elijah, I said, get footage of this. and he didn't. Sometimes Dad asks him to do things and he doesn't do it. It's all right. I did the same thing. I still do. And I said, get footage of me because I want to celebrate and honor this man who gave up a chance at a blanket to put blankets on his friends. And I want footage of me shaking this man's hand. I wish I had it. He was a good guy. And he was reluctant to shake my hand for a second. And I wasn't sure why. It was David's soot on my hand. Is this the most efficient way to do this? No, but if we had the money, we would do it more efficiently. But we're not waiting. That day on Facebook, I was not doing well emotionally, and it had been a while since I had gone to update my prescription for my medication, and I needed to do it, which I've now done and gotten caught up. I posted on Facebook that picture of my hand. And I said, believe, disbelief. I don't give a shit. Do the work. It's been my mantra for weeks now. And in the time that I've been doing this, I have not had one spiral. I have not spiraled once. It won't last forever. But usually at least once every 2 weeks, and in bad situations, at least once a week. I have a 24 to 72 hour spiral where all I can think about is ending it all. In 3 weeks, I haven't had one. I wrote a letter that day and posted it on the front page of korahor.org about people who want to join our movement. And that the letter I said, the Church of Korahor, we transform painful lives into lives worth living. When you are a Korahor, the first life you will change is yours. It's been so long since I believed in anything. I believe in this. I believe in us. If we listen, if we learn, if we admit to our faults, and we admit to our toxicity, we'll become better people. We'll save some lives. But more importantly, we will make some days in the last days of someone's life feel like it was worth the pain because someone reached out to them in love when they were in their worst place. And when gods and governments weren't there, Korahors were. Some people were a joke. This church for atheists. Hi, Jenny. We're no fucking joke. This is real. That's all I want to do from now on. I was too, Jenny. 20 years ago. Now we're making something. Maybe we'll fail. No, we will fail. But we won't give up. Not while I'm here. And now, more than any time in my life, I have a reason to be here. I spent 2 years of my childhood from 1999 to 2001 making Mormons out of Catholics. And just about every day of those 2 years in South America, spoiled, rich, comparatively, white boy that I was from America, all I could think about was ending it. And I thought, isn't this supposed to be the time of my life where I lose myself in the work and it all feels worthwhile? And sometimes I almost glimpsed it. Sometimes I could swear I felt it. But it's not been until we did this that I felt it every day. No hallowed hand can stop this work. I can't do it all alone. But because of Jenny and Jules and Nikki. Because I have the opportunity to learn from Maven, from Brett Hartley, from Anton Troyer, from Evan Charlie, from Kai Van Leuven, because these people, not all of whom are atheists. From Steve Pinecker, I'd be remiss to not mention. From Kulch. Because of these people who gave of their time, are giving of their time. I'm not alone. And I thank all of you. If we have to carry on doing it alone, will we do it? I will. I'll keep going. And I thank you all for your patience with me. Let's have a closing hymn and then we'll get out of here. Nobody tell me who won the sports ball game. I don't give a shit.
Like Korah, I was lost and alone. Like Korah, cast far from home. Like Korah, they stole my voice. Like Korah, left without a choice. But unlike Korah, I can speak again. Unlike I had you. Like Korah, no guardian angels flew. Like Korah, shamed by those I never knew. At no God's command, my own footprints remain in this sand. But unlike Korah,